of Monday, May the 10th. I'm just looking to confirm all of council attendance here. I can see Councillor Beddoes, Councillor Bateman, Councillor Logans, Councillor Lajeunesse, Councillor St. Pierre. So just looking for Councillor McMath. Are you in the meeting? Ooh, something just happened. Now I can't see anything. Okay, there we go. Councillor McMath, are you in the meeting?
No, I don't see her here, Your Worship.
Okay, so just looking for attendance. So I'll keep a look or let me know when she's joined. So we'll call tonight's meeting to order, and I do wish to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting virtually on the territory of the Sooke Nation. So item 5 of our agenda is Ministerial Order M192, and that is that Council is holding this meeting without members of the public in attendance under Ministerial Order M192, as Council chambers cannot safely accommodate the unknown number of public participants wishing to attend, and that Council is committed to ensuring openness, transparency, accessibility, and accountability through the submission of written comments and the provision of live and recorded broadcasts of the meeting. So look for a mover of that, please. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. All those in favor, please. And that's unanimous. Thank you. Next up is approval of the agenda. And I did receive an email from staff just about another change. So the first one is that the agenda for the May 10th, 2021 regular meeting of Council be adopted as amended. Item 1. That item number, or bullet 1, sorry, item number 14.1, business license bylaw number 778-2021, additional information be moved for discussion prior to item number 13.8, the outstanding business license fees. Second bullet, that item number 13.7, official community plan scope and direction be moved for discussion prior to item number 13.6, the proposed amendments to official community plan advisory committee terms of reference. I believe that so staff can provide some further comments on those. So I'll look for an approval with those amendments, please. So moved by Councillor Bateman and seconded by Councillor, I didn't see whose hand that was, Councillor St. Pierre. Thank you for that. And I just might need some prodding or I'll have staff flag me if I don't follow that order because I'm looking at too many devices right now. So all those in favor, please. And that's unanimous. Thank you. So item number 7 is up first. So this is public and statutory hearings. The first one is 7.1, a development variance permit, PLN 01581 for 2081 Charters Road. So we have our report here. However, I'll turn this over to staff, please, to introduce the report.
Thank you. I'll begin here sharing my screen. All right, are you able to see the presentation now?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you, Mr. Paolo.
All right. All right, so we've received a development variance permit application for a property located at 2081 Charters Road to permit the recent construction to an existing single-family dwelling, which encompasses a enclosed garage, converting a deck into a habitable living space, and constructing a new deck and exterior staircase, which is to remain as currently cited. The applicant has requested to vary the zoning bylaw, section 207.1, for the purposes of reducing the required side lot line setback from 1.5 meters to 0.8 meters. This presentation provides background on the recent construction that's been undertaken without the authorization and issuance of a building permit, and requirements for a variance permit to permit the alteration to the existing single-family dwelling, which is proposed to remain. Retroactive permitting of unauthorized construction is always a difficult process, and staff have conducted an extensive review of the BP history, and through that process, we're bringing forward this development permit application. All right, so the next slide here What we have is the location, which is north of the Charters Road and College Avenue intersection and to the east of Sooke Elementary School. The subject property is predominantly flat, falls within the Throop Stream watershed, and is approximately 928 square meters in size. Subject property is currently zoned large lot residential, which is the R1 zoning, and is designated community residential in the OCP. As part of the building permit review by the planning department, we've noted that the request from the applicant is to obtain a certified survey of the existing single-family dwelling to ensure that the setbacks were compliant with the zoning bylaw. The retained contractor for the project proceeded with building the proposed alterations without the issuance of a building permit. The scope of the unauthorized construction included demolishing the existing carport with an open deck above and completely rebuilding a new enclosed garage, converting the open deck to a habitable living space, and then building a new deck space and exterior staircase to the rear. During this time, the building department made several attempts to communicate with the applicant, which at that time was the contractor, and that a building permit had not been issued and that proceeding with construction was not authorized and would be at the property owner's risk. The site survey that was submitted revealed that the recently constructed alteration to the existing single-family dwelling did in fact encroach into the required side lot line setback by 0.8 meters, and the area highlighted in red shows the portion of the alteration to an existing single-family dwelling that's been constructed within that required 1.5 meter setback. The retained contractor has since been removed from this project, and now the legal property owners have applied for this variance request. The existing single-family dwelling was constructed in 1968, according to records, and after a review of the building permit application by the planning department, it was determined that the site survey would be required to ensure that the existing single-family dwelling, as well as the proposed alterations to the dwelling, were compliant with the zoning bylaw. After the survey was completed, it did in fact reveal that the setback from the east side of the house to the property line was 0.8 meters, and therefore, since the new construction was enclosing the garage and creating a habitable living space and deck above, where within that 1.5 meter setback, the applicant was requested to reduce the setback to 8 meters so that the construction undertaking could comply with the zoning bylaw. As a result, denial of this variance request would require partial deconstruction of the recently completed alterations to the existing single-family dwelling and building of a new deck and exterior staircase. If the variance as requested by the applicant is approved by council, an inspection will be required to be conducted by building officials of the district's building department under the requirements of the current building permit application that's been submitted. Any building code compliance issues will need to be addressed as part of the building permit process, which will commence should council approve this variance. Staff are in support of issuance of the variance as requested by the applicant in order to bring the current siting of the recently constructed alterations to the existing single-family dwelling into conformity with the zoning bylaw and allow the continuation of the building permit to continue in its review. Staff recommend issuance of development variance permit PLN 01581 for 2081 Charters Road. That concludes my presentation tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Palau, for the presentation. I'll look now to council if you have any questions before we move into public input. So questions, Councillor Beddoes, go ahead, please.
Yeah, through the chair, to Mr. Palau. When a building is completed, how does our inspection happen? You know, because we don't know what's in the walls or any of that. The last time we had this situation, I believe the inspector said that they couldn't do it, so they wanted an engineer to sign off on it. Would that happen in this case, or how would our staff go about inspecting that when it's all closed up?
So a code compliance report from an engineer or architect is one method of having that remedy to confirm that it's been constructed per code. Also to note is that the building inspectors had been out at site a number of times prior to this coming before council, just to be in contact with the contractor. So they may have noted what was being constructed at the time, but typically, as you had indicated, we would rely on the applicant to provide a compliance code report from an architect or an engineer that was stamped.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor St. Pierre.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just curious about something that was mentioned in your presentation, Mr. Paulo, and that was that the contractor had been the applicant. During that time period, was the homeowner also contacted about the lack of a building permit, or was it strictly the contractor that was contacted?
At the time, the communication was with the applicant, who was the contractor at that time, and so when this had moved forward and the landowner had been notified, that's when the contractor was taken off the project, and the property owner took control, ceased all further construction of the property, and submitted for the development variance permit. And that's partly the reason why there aren't any railings that have been constructed on the back deck, because they did not want to proceed with any further construction.
Just a question further to this. I'm curious as to whether or not, is this standard that the homeowner, the building permit would affect the property directly of the homeowner? Is it a standard operating procedure for the district that the applicant would be considered to be the contractor as opposed to the homeowner, or that they would not both be contacted? I'm just curious about that piece, because it has come up in the past where it's difficult to get a hold of the contractor or an engineering firm or whatever, and yet the homeowner is fully available and could act as an intermediary. So I'm curious about, will this happen again?
So in terms of who the contact person is or parties as part of application processes, we have noted that certain instances like this are tending to create conflict both for staff and also between contractor and property owners. So it's become practice now that we will notify both the applicant agent as well as the property owner moving forward on not just building permits, but other applications that we have for development in process.
Wonderful, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bateman.
Yes, thank you. Through you to Mr. Powell, I have a few questions. I note in your report you say retroactive permitting is always challenging, so I can see why in this case. I'm curious, were the legal owners ever aware of the need for the building permit and the lack thereof? Were you able to ask that question?
I believe the property owners were aware of the need for a building permit, and so in hiring a contractor, the contractor took out a building permit with the district. However, the contractor did not wait until the building permit was authorized by the district, and so they proceeded at their own risk with constructing. At times, contractors may do this in the attempt to assume that the permit will be issued. However, from time to time, these zoning bylaw issues do arise outside of the building code requirements, and so that has to put a stop to the building that's in process and wait for the proper approvals to be given, and then a permit could be issued. So that did not occur in this instance.
So the new building code, and the old one undoubtedly, frowns very dramatically on this kind of behavior, and it has punitive measures in section 17. Are any of those applicable in this case, apart from pulling down the existing building?
Correct. So if development were to proceed without a building permit being issued, a penalty of double fees can be applied to a building permit. And so at that time, whatever fees that have been calculated for the permit would be multiplied by 2 in that instance.
And in this case, the building permit fee would be how much?
I don't have that specific number on hand right now, but that's something that we confirm with the building department when they've gone through that process.
Yeah. Okay. I'm curious as to the building department. Could they not have issued a stop work order knowing that this project was proceeding?
That is always one method of proceeding with to address the issue. However, we like to work with the property or the applicants to ensure that the work at least ceases moving forward. And so in this instance, the work did cease after multiple attempts to work with the contractor, and then the property owner took over in that instance. If there's an instance where multiple attempts have not been successful and the property continues to be under construction, then that's when we may look into the appropriateness for putting a stop order on.
Okay, finally, has it been determined what remedial steps are required to address the neighbors' drainage concerns as a result of
Just
this new
excuse me, sorry, Councillor Bateman, to interrupt. There's tremendous feedback, so I need everyone to mute. Okay, that's better. Go ahead, Councillor Bateman.
Okay, so I'm curious if you've talked or if you looked into what remedial steps are required to assist the neighbors with their drainage concerns.
We haven't noted any drainage concerns at this time, so that would be something that would need to be further discussed to determine if this development in fact is causing a drainage issue. As part of the code compliance report, if the variance is granted, we would ensure that that's not creating an offsite issue as well.
Okay. Of course, we do have a letter from the neighbors in our package tonight. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Lajeunesse.
Yes, so the new structure, is the footprint the same as the existing structure or the previous carport structure?
No, actually, the alteration has increased that footprint, and that's through the site survey indicating now that it's encroached beyond the 1.5 meters. So this alteration has expanded that footprint closer to the side lot line.
Excuse me, I'm not sure if it's appropriate for me to speak. I'm the owner of the 2081 charters. And
Yes, sir. I'll just please, I will be going to public input, at which time you'll be able to speak. It's just right now I'm fielding questions from council. So once the questions are done, then we'll go to public input, in which point I'll invite all interested parties, including yourself, to present and speak to council.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Councillor Lajeunesse, I believe you, sorry, that threw me off. Councillor Lajeunesse, did you finish your question, or I think was Mr. Paulo answering it?
Yeah, I was just curious as to whether the former structure was also non-compliant, and if this new structure was imposing more into the setback, and it sounds as though it is.
Okay. For the new member, Ms. McMillan, who's just joined us, can you please turn your video off? I see that you're muted, but I also need you to turn your camera off. Councillor Logans?
Thank you. I just have a question in regards to the neighbor's letter. That the owner, it says the owners are renting out 2 suites in the house. And potentially a 3rd suite, but specifically that children and family are using the deck to access the new living space. And I'm wondering if this has already been rented out, what would happen if we went ahead with this permit? Would they, like, what are the repercussions for the family living in that unit? Or do we have anything to ensure that it does not become a livable space for an additional family?
So throughout a period of time, actually before the district became incorporated, there was notes on the file that this had been a duplex. However, as part of all of the construction that's being proposed in the alterations, the intent is to have a single family dwelling and a suite. So the issuance of a building permit for the single family dwelling in this suite would currently recognize what the present use of the property is. In terms of past uses of additional suites being rented out, we are aware that that may have occurred. However, the intent moving forward is to legitimize the property in its entirety for a single family dwelling in a suite. And if there's additional information, the applicant might be more appropriate to answer that further on the history of the house.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything further from members of council at this time? Any further questions? Okay, so now I'd like to go to the public input section. And of course, as Councillor Bateman had noted, there is one item of correspondence with photos that has been received. It's in your agenda package. And I understand that the applicant is here, as you know, and so I'd like to invite the applicant to present to council now, please.
Yes, hi, this is Tim Norris here, the owner of 2081 Charters, and I'm here
Mr.
along.
Norris, are you able to turn your video on so we can see you?
Absolutely.
Do you have that? Okay. There
Hello.
we go. Thank you.
Hi, so just a couple of things. One, this is new to me, so I apologize if I spoke out of turn and or say something inappropriate, but so just coming for the first time. To address one of the councillor's statement or questions around, is the property larger footprint this time around? No, it is not. This was an existing structure. The garage has been in place since, I believe, 1967, 1968, and we're building on the existing slab. So the variance, I guess, or the setback from the property line has been in place since before I owned the property. So just to answer your question, Councillor. And with regards to renting, know that my children are here with regards to 50% of the time. And so if the neighbor is seeing folks going up and down the rear stairs to the additional room that we're trying to have finished, that would have been from my family. Just to address those two concerns that were brought up. And with regards to the story of why we're here, like we, as Dan Palo mentioned, I believe he's done a great job with putting the pieces together there. And the contractor, if he was contacted from the city, we were not told about the variance requirement or a site survey at the time. And so after multiple inquiries with my contractor saying, where's the permit, what's going on? That's when my father took it upon himself to go into the city and see what the heck was happening. And that's when we found out, well, where's your site survey? And we were not told that we needed to even get one. So we immediately stopped. It's just the outer shell of this place that's finished. It's still bare bones construction, so it's easily viewable for the city, as we've been working closely with them throughout this process while we waited for the variance permit application to run its course, along with getting that site survey, which showed we were 0.8 setback, not the 1.5 requirement.
Okay, Mr. Norris, then do you currently live, so this is your residence, you live at the property?
Yes, it is. It's my primary home.
Okay, and then you're looking for, it's one secondary suite then to rent?
No, there is no other suite going on. This is, my parents have retired and recently moved out here from Ontario, and they're currently living in my space. And we decided that the garage, we were looking at upgrading it to use an additional room to support them living here. But when we were looking at that garage, the roof was leaking, and we thought that from a cost perspective, it might just make the most sense just to go right above the deck that was above the garage and not impede or grow the building any larger, and just close in the upper deck. And then we would be able to get an additional room of space for the existing building.
Okay, so the renovations are basically to sort of accommodate all of your family.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, understood. Okay, well, thank you very much for addressing council tonight and for being with us. We certainly appreciate that.
Thank you for letting me have a turn to address any questions or concerns you have for my variance application.
Okay, Councillor Beddoes, did you have a question for the applicant? You're on mute.
Get my sign out again. It's either for the applicant or staff, because we've got a discrepancy here. The applicant's saying that he's using the basic footprint that he had before, and we got staff saying that it's a larger footprint. So I'd like a clarification as to which it is, please. I don't know who answers that. Somebody, probably staff first, please.
Certainly. So yes, because we didn't have any records on file and we required the site survey to be submitted, that was our record indicating that there was an encroachment. So it was our understanding at the time that there was an enlargement. Of course, with all the construction that has proceeded at this point and without an approved building permit, we can't confirm much of the information until the code compliance report is submitted by the applicant. So if the applicant is indicating that all of these works are on the existing footprint, a code compliance report should indicate that as so.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor St. Pierre.
Thank you. I'm curious about the letter that we received from the neighbors, and specifically with regards to the drainage issues, which seem to be long-standing. When the construction was stopped, was it stopped before gutters were put in by any chance? And have there been gutters in the past or some means of actually redirecting the water? Because that's generally pretty basic stuff. I'm just curious about.
Yes, it is. And with regards to that, there was an existing drain actually in what we were finding when starting to do the work around the garage that was plugged. And also the overhead deck was also just dripping off, of course, down to the side. So now actually with this addition, we are going to have eaves troughs that will go into the existing drainage system as part of the house and should address any of those concerns from water buildup that has happened in the years prior to this, once the job is allowed to complete. Because right now we still don't have gutters put on because we've all stopped since the word got to us that a site survey would be required to facilitate our building permit.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you for answering that, Mr. Norris. I'm just going to, okay, Councillor Beddoes again, go ahead.
And just one other comment around the setback or the side about like if we were encroaching or anything. Tony and Stan have been kind of lockstep and barrel with us, and then they could vouch or state that it was the same structure, size and footprint. It was just unknown at the time with the city inspectors when our permit was going in, whether one would be even required if we were going on an existing structure and not enlarging the footprint. And that's when it was being told to us that when they were visiting to continue on and that we would be in touch. And at that point, I still had them pinpointing and going back and forth with our contractor, who is less than stellar in my opinion in this role, and that's why my father and I decided to take over the building permit application process to complete this further.
Okay,
Councillor
thank
Better, you need to unmute, and St. Pierre, you need to mute.
Yeah, I just go back to, I noticed Mr. Paulo had a different set of pictures than I have on my iPad here, which showed the old structure. Any chance you could pull that up again, please?
The one for Mr. Paulo's presentation?
Yeah, he
Okay.
he had a picture showing you know, the old structure and the deck, and I don't have that in my package. I just have the new structure. Is that possible to see that again, please?
Sure, I'm just looking for it here in the slides. Was it this one?
I don't know. We'll see in a second here. Okay. Yeah, and unfortunately, it doesn't give me what I'm looking for, as I was looking for, you know, a shot of it to see where it was situated. But
if you, I did see that too, Councillor. If you could go to the next few slides, I thought there's a good picture of it there with the previous owner's truck parked in the laneway. And you can see the railing that was there closing in above the garage. That is now there. It's hard to see that next to the neighbor's fence there, but the exact same footprint as you can see on the picture on the left of the garage that's been fixed, along with it being closed in above, is in fact, believe it or not, actually a little less, because you can see On the right-hand side picture, there's a little bit of an overhang there to support the railing, which is no longer in play.
Okay, thank you. That is what I was looking for. It wasn't quite as clear as I originally thought, but it does give me an indication, and I appreciate that being pulled up for me. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Lajeunesse, I see your hand.
Yeah, and I noticed that too, which is why I originally posed the question, because the existing concrete looks as though it's been there since 1968, and that it didn't, so that was the original driveway, and it makes sense that it would be in alignment with the original carport. And so when I originally looked at tonight's agenda, I assumed that the footprint hadn't actually changed.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just going to ask our corporate officer, do we have other members of the public registered to speak to this item?
Thank you, Your Worship. The only one I will ask is Ms. McMillan. She did not advise if she wanted to speak to any of the items this evening, so if she could just let us know if she wants to observe the meeting or if she's planning to speak to any of the items. That is the only other person in the meeting.
I'm just listening, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Ms. McMillan. Okay, thank you, Mr. Norris. You can now turn your video off, but thank you for being available and for answering those questions. Okay, so council, that concludes our public input. So staff have put forward the following recommendation that I'll read out, and that is that council authorize the issuance of development variance permit PLN 01581 for 2081 Charters Road, a permit to reduce the required side lot line setback from 1.5 meters to 0.8 meters for the purpose of permitting the recent construction to an existing single-family dwelling to remain as currently cited. So that is the recommendation from staff. Councillor St. Pierre, you're moving the resolution?
Yes, I am.
Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. Okay, so now we're on the motion. So Councillor St. Pierre, would you like to speak to it?
Yes, just briefly. I was mostly concerned about the letter from the neighbor, and it seems that actually completing the construction will actually bring relief to the neighbor most effectively in terms of getting railings for the safety of children, in terms of making sure the appropriate drainage is put in. At this point in time, it seems that the applicant, the homeowners, really just got caught in the middle of the process and certainly didn't go out of their way to build without a permit. And given that they're trying to provide housing for their family, I think it's entirely appropriate to approve this variance.
Thank you, Councillor. Over to Councillor Lajeunesse as the seconder.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and also I'm not a fan of build it and ask for forgiveness later. It seems like we see this on occasion, but in this case, it sounds like the homeowner is kind of caught in the middle here between the district and a contractor that was maybe not playing by the rules, and so I'm prepared to support this as well.
Okay, thank you. Other members of council wish to comment? I see Councillor Beddoes, go ahead.
Yeah, it's funny how things turn around, because when I first came into this meeting, I would say I was sort of leaning the other way. But I guess the fact that it is on the same footprint it has been on since the 60s, I don't have a great deal of problem. And the second factor that I'm really pleased to hear is that when the owner was aware that this thing is really screwed up badly, he stopped work, and that the walls and everything are still open, so that a proper inspection can be handled. I do sympathize with the neighbor, but I don't know if this, if he had this problem before, this has not made it any worse. So I'm inclined to agree with the variance. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bateman, I believe.
Oh, sorry, I'm taking that out.
Yeah, I lowered my hand, but I'll just say my initial fear was that we were dealing with a scofflaw, and we were in fact hearing Mr. Norris clearly is not that individual. He is, he and his family are who's seeking a great home. And I'm pleased to hear that that drainage will be dealt with. There are no windows on that side to impinge on the neighbor's privacy. So yeah, all good to go.
Okay, anything from Councillor McMath or Logans? Okay, so just for myself, I agree with what council has said. I certainly appreciate the applicant being available to address the concerns. It seems like with the work that's being done, that the drainage problem will hopefully be addressed, given the fact that a drain was plugged and that the roof itself from the old structure was leaking. That probably is what caused a lot of the problems to date. And of course, once this is done, you will sort of know when winter comes now that we're in dry season. In terms to our staff though, for myself, just given the busyness that everyone is under, there comes a point in time that if there's no compliance, and this isn't the applicant's fault, it's the contractor, that a stop work order be issued immediately. It sounds like our staff made multiple attempts, and even the fire department was on site because of the burning. So that's where the contractor should be fined, not the homeowner, but the contractor for the burning of those materials. And certainly for the our staff is busy, and this is one of those things, like constantly chasing down incomplete applications and then someone pushing on ahead. I find that frustrating. In this case, though, I am satisfied that as soon as the owners became aware of the problem, they came into the district office and then have taken the matter into their own hands to come into compliance. So that puts the district at ease and certainly the neighbor as well. But, you know, I just feel that there should be a consequence to the contractor. And I just think going forward, like one attempt is enough, and if not necessarily on this site but on others, but if that continues, then put a stop work order on it. Certainly there's enough people with good applications that are stuck in the queue waiting, and they're waiting because this type of behavior is continuing in our district. And so, you know, I'm satisfied with moving ahead, and I'm grateful that the owners have taken upon themselves to address it. But as for the contractor and others choosing to do that way, it must stop. We just don't have the resources to chase this sort of stuff down, and it's just nonsense in my opinion. Okay, I will call the question then, and we'll move on. So all those in favor, please, of the variance? And that's unanimous. Thank you very much, and thank you to the applicant for joining with us tonight. You feel free to exit the meeting, but you're always welcome to stay in and view the rest of it. We'd love to have an audience.
You just made my day. Thank you very much, Council. I appreciate everything. All the best.
And to you as well.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I guess he's not wanting to stay. Well, that's fine. Okay, so we'll move on, Council, to adoption of meeting minutes. And here we have sets from April the 12th regular, April 13th special, April 26th regular, April 27th special. So the recommendation is that we adopt all of these as circulated. So look for a mover by Councillor Logans and seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Any questions or corrections? Corrections or comments? None. That's excellent. Thank you. All those in favor, please. And that's unanimous. Thank you. So next up for our delegation, pleased to welcome our detachment commander, our base commander, Brett Sinden, with an update. So welcome to our staff sergeant.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. Thanks for making some time for me tonight. We recently finished our 2021 fiscal year, so I thought I'd take this opportunity just to cover off some of our priorities that I identified at the beginning of the year and sort of where we ended up. We got a bit of a boost in our efforts. COVID kind of helped with some issues. It was a little quiet for a good chunk of this year, and certainly a year that's different than any other one I've ever experienced. I'm not going to be doing anything fancy like sharing my screen because I'd probably disconnect. But I did forward a couple of pieces of paper that are in the agenda that I'll be working off of here. The first one is the 2021 annual performance plan outcomes. So in regards to enhanced road safety, we had a focus on impaired driving, drugs and alcohol, and we set a goal for a reduction of 5%. And we actually realized a reduction of 25%. It was pretty advantageous. There weren't very many people moving around at all in the first quarter of the year. Our other goal, crime reduction, we had a focus on preventing and reducing property crime. Again, it was a goal of 5%, and we managed to achieve a 15% goal. We conducted 375 curfew compliance checks in the fiscal year, holding offenders accountable that are in the community, making sure they're where they've agreed to be. And another priority to report back to you on was we wanted to work on our communication and visibility, building and maintaining positive relations with our partners. We set up a new system where we can highlight problem areas and focus on them, and we can adjust that throughout the year, just based on where we're getting our calls, and make sure that we're being visible in those areas and talking to people in those communities. Over the period of year, we documented 5,291 patrols. We've always done that work. We've never tracked it before. It's certainly something we're going to carry on into the next year, because it really allows us to focus on the problems that are brought to us. We also had 99 documented outreach opportunities. That's meetings with clients, partners, community groups, and other things. Certainly, a lot of the in-person meetings were cut back at the beginning of the year. But one good thing that has come out of COVID is our virtual meetings have become a lot more prevalent. And when it comes to meeting with partners like probation and Crown Counsel, I don't anticipate we'll ever go back to traveling as much as we did before. So it allows us a lot more time to focus on things locally. Just in regards to our resources for the period, at this point, it looks like we used 12.61 of our 13 FTEs in that fiscal year. I think it's actually a little bit less than that. It hasn't quite been reconciled yet. But I'll remind you, as I've told you before, we have one other position that's been working in Sooke in excess of 2 years that's paid through a different funding source. That individual is still working in our detachment, but I do anticipate a time where we'll no longer have them, but we will continue to use them while we've got them. And a bit of a resource update since the last time we spoke. I think the last time we spoke, we were just getting Sergeant Kevin Shaw, our new operations NCO. He's been in place for a while. We've also had 2 new members to Sooke in that time. One is Constable Christy Statham, who joined us from Terrace. She replaced Constable Naomi Good, who moved on to Nanaimo. And Constable Kathleen Byron joined us from the Island District Office, and she replaced Constable Jason Messenger, who's on leave of absence. Right now, currently today, we're down a couple of members. One is on paternity leave, and when he returns, he will be transferring to West Shore Detachment. So we're recruiting for that position right now. And we also have one that's on graduated return to work following a surgery that she had recently. We continue to work with the integrated units throughout the Capital Regional District. They include the Mobile Youth Services Team, Integrated Mobile Crisis Response Team, the Regional Domestic Violence Unit, Greater Victoria Crime Stoppers, the Greater Victoria Police Diversity Advisory Committee, and the Integrated Road Safety Unit. I've also provided you with April's monthly mayor report. This is the same report that you get sent every month. We changed it for the beginning of this fiscal year just to break up violent crime and property crime, just to give a better breakdown instead of you having to pick through the types of files. What I can say is everything is fairly stable compared to last year, the same period. At this point, we're tracking to do about 4,000 files in the District of Sooke for 2021, and a total of 5,400. Now that's a bit of a reduction to what it's been, but our files don't generally play out that way. This is just the average, and I'm basing the average on a less busy time of year that has just passed. So I don't anticipate that's what we're going to end up with. And the last thing I wanted to point out, so our strategic priorities for 2021-2022 are going to remain fairly similar to what they were last year. Some minor tweaks in wording, and there will be some tweaks in the objectives and how we achieve those based on some current information. But they're on that report on the second page. Again, we're going to focus on enhanced road safety, but rather than just focusing on impaired operation, we're also going to be focused on aggressive driving and distracted driving. both significant issues that, that generate a lot of calls in our community. So we're going to make that a bigger priority. Once again, focus on crime reduction, prevent and reduce property crime, communication and visibility, continue maintaining positive relationships within the community, and we're going to continue our efforts for contributing to employee wellness and fostering a respectful workplace within our detachment. Overall, we've continued to be quite fully staffed, as you can see by the numbers there. We're getting pretty close to that 13 number, and that has served us quite well. It's been a different year. There's lots of stuff, lots of things that we aren't doing. We haven't been able to get into the schools, but there's lots of pressures that came with COVID too, and a lot of files that don't necessarily show up in the crime stats. With a lot of neighbor disputes, a lot of frustrated people, a lot of those kind of calls. I mean, COVID and our extra body worked fairly well for us this past year. I anticipate that we're going to start getting busier as we get back to normal here, and we're ready for it and ready to keep working with you to provide the best service that we can. And that's my presentation.
Well, we certainly appreciate your time with us today. Oh, I'm getting a weird feedback. Can that be fixed? Staff, can you please fix that? It's just that, okay, that's better. There's this echo that's not going away.
I'll pause. I can mute mine and see if it's me here. Hang on.
Is that any better? Okay, so that is better. Thank you very much for doing that. So thank you for your time with us tonight, and certainly to all the work that the detachment is doing. It's been a very extraordinary time. I don't even know how to describe it with an adjective that could be stated publicly. So thank you for all you're doing. It seems though that whenever we receive your presentation in council, you and I end up connecting a few days later because media picks up something through social media. The last time we had seen that, everything is trending down, all the great work we're doing, and then I get a call saying that there's been an exponential rise in crime, and this is from traditional media, and I guess they're following social media where so much is made up. So I appreciate that I can just reach out and we can try to clear the message again and then share that out with the community. And so what I've been advising residents to do is to connect with you directly or to the detachment to get the real factual information. Our community is safe and our members of the RCMP are doing a fantastic job. I've also, for those that have stated that they've endured some form of property crime, they really need to report it. And so the sentiment back is like, oh, it wasn't a big deal, or it was too small. And I'm thinking, well, it's bothering you because now you're phoning me and I don't have the resources or the ability to go out and check this. So then you should report it, because the more data we have, the better our detachment can do their job. So I just wanted to share that with you. I'm curious if depot was closed due to COVID, and if it was, like, how will that impact just the pool of new recruits?
It was closed for a period of time. I actually have a recruit reserved. One advantage we have of living in such a beautiful spot is I don't really have to rely on recruits. So I always have one reserved as a fallback, but there's no shortage of members calling the detachment looking to come and work with Sooke. So I anticipate that that the position that we have vacant will probably be filled with an experienced member from somewhere else. But the recruits are starting to come out of depot now.
Okay, and then the other piece is just with the way that real estate has really rocketed through COVID, is the other piece is that would members be able to afford to move here? Because it depends on which market you're coming from. And so, I would appreciate it. It may be too early to tell right now, but I'd be curious to know if that becomes a challenge or a barrier to recruitment in the future because of the price of real estate. And then the other piece is, unfortunately, we had to put sort of our request for an additional member on hold, not because we don't support the detachment and all that you're doing. It was just because learning from the province that we will need to shoulder the burden of the e-com costs and how that will impact our municipal budgets. And so it's not an easy bill to absorb. I just got off a call earlier today from the Solicitor General. He's very keen to hearing from us, but doesn't seem, you know, as we're trying to push this download, or we're trying to upload this download, we're frozen a bit there. So we're sort of looking on what our next steps are. But it, while he was receptive to hearing, I didn't hear a, oh, don't worry about that, you know, we'll do what you're asking. It was more, thank you for making your concern known to us and get ready for this bill. So I just, well, we have put together some revenue for the growth that, you know, with census data due today, and just as a growing municipality and some of the other pieces, we certainly want to build up that reserve for a smooth transition. But this one came out of nowhere and was dropped on us. So it's still one that we're you know, the mayors are doing their best to upload. I'm a bit worried about it. So I just wanted to share that. And I did express to Minister Farnsworth that this is how it's impacting a community like us in terms of our inability now to bring in new members. But I also would need to hear from you when it comes time for resources. We really need to have that conversation and then sort of communicate out to the public as needed, because community safety is a priority of ours. So I just wanted to let you know that we're still in the middle of doing that work. But otherwise, certainly appreciate everyone's time, and I imagine as things open up, you'll get busier and more interesting concerns. But even for the ones I've raised here, detachment, thank you to everyone for responding so quickly. So I'll just go to, sorry, I cut you off.
No, thank you. I just wanted to say I'm aware of that ecom issue, which is why I did not push my usual staffing numbers discussion I have with you every time we meet. I believe that you're already on board with that. I will add that I did write a business case for 2 new provincial positions as well, which is in the hopper. I'm not holding my breath, but I am working that side as well. And when you're talking to the minister, you may certainly want to bring that up if the opportunity arises.
Thank you very much. So I see some councillors have some questions. Councillor St. Pierre, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Just a quick question for the Staff Sergeant, through your worship. I was curious about the Mental Health Act and the number of interventions you've had to deal with. I understand from some of our important community partners that mental health has been a significant issue with the pandemic. I was curious about how you were resourced in terms of basically addressing what seems to be, honestly, not a huge increase, but what we understand to be a significant increase.
Yeah, it's a significant issue, and it's certainly being pushed quite aggressively through the Mayor of Saanich, the Mayor of View Royal right now, and you're going to see a lot more of that coming. Everything that they convey about waiting times and how long our members are tied up for, you can add an hour and an hour and a half to each side for every Sooke file. It's not unusual at all for us to have a member spend at least half of their shift between dealing with somebody with some mental health challenges, going to the Jube and sitting there and waiting until a decision is made with them. It certainly impacts your budget, because there are times in our schedule where that's significant enough that if we have some other demands on at the same time, it results in overtime to backfill them while they're out of the community for that long. I know that there's a push for the provincial government to have special constables at the hospital that look after that. I personally don't anticipate that could happen, but it was something that existed before. It's quite prevalent at every area chiefs meeting that we have, and as I said, I know some other councils are certainly addressing that as a big issue right now. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor Beddoes, please.
Yeah, for the Staff Sergeant, I don't know if he's able to answer this, but since the old Mulligans is closed down for the housing the homeless, and they've moved up to the Hope Center, have you noticed any uptick on problems in the downtown area?
We have not yet. It's something that we're watching very closely and attempting to work with the leadership at the homeless shelter as well. There's been some changes in leadership there, so it's we're starting over a little bit, and we hope to have as positive a relationship with the leadership there that we did with the last location, to work together as those problems come up. We fully intend to share any problems that are coming up with the leadership at the shelter, so that they're able to take whatever steps they can to help mitigate it as well.
Yeah, the reason I asked, I had a merchant today acknowledge that things have changed in that area because of that. But my advice is that if there's any problems, to call you guys. You know, that's what you're there for. So I was just wondering, or curious, is you know, down at Mulligan's area, I thought it was very well managed and well run, and hopefully it is up at the Hope Center as well. But just an interest. Thank you.
Thank you.
And it's actually the third location now, so
Yeah.
probably and a third manager. So thank you for adapting so quickly there. Councillor Bateman.
Yes, through you to Staff Sergeant. Question around, later in the agenda tonight, we will be discussing the 30 km/h on secondary streets without a center line. What are your thoughts on that particular issue?
Given that I know some other communities in the CRD have gone to that, and I was part of some of the discussions at Area Chiefs, the biggest frustration that was shared there was the change in what the rules are from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, and the frustration that drivers may have with that. I don't know that I have an opinion on that right now. Is that a fair answer?
That's a fair answer. That's a fair answer. Staffing levels, and thank you for saying we're on it. I just wanted to clarify, here we are in the OCP process, and the current OCP would like to see a ratio of 1 to 1,000 residents for officers. And I know we're currently at about 1 to 1,100, and the provincial average is 1 for 744. So we're, are you lobbying for a number in this OCP with Councillor Beddoes and the committee?
Not per se. I'm just pushing for something that sort of falls in line with similar communities, with an understanding that we are next to a major urban center. We're placing next to Langford, which is closer to about 1 to 850. We have an awful lot of people that travel back and forth between those communities. And my concern, and I'm not going anywhere, so it will be something that I'm dealing with, is that our population growth gets too far ahead of us, and we get to the point where it's very difficult to catch up. It takes a long time to put new policemen in the jobs, and we could find ourselves in a pretty tight spot.
Okay. You're counting on seeing at least one new officer in our next year's budget. Is that correct?
I would certainly like to, yes.
Okay, all right. And finally, you know, back to the mayor's comments about media perceptions about levels of crime. In the email box today, the grumpy taxpayers let us know that perceptions of crime may be accurate in the Greater Victoria region, and that I think in particular in Victoria, but perceptions of rising crime in Sooke, your stats seem to show that we are in fact very consistent over time in terms of calls at any rate.
Yes. Yes, I mean, we had a pretty big bump in perception of crime when we brought the homeless population together. Seeing people that are experiencing some challenges congregated in one place led to at times a mistaken belief of crime. It wasn't necessarily crime, perhaps some behavior that some people weren't used to seeing, because before that we had people spread all about town and we weren't seeing large groups. But right now, the stats don't necessarily support much of an increase or a decrease. Pretty much status quo. A little bit of a drop because of COVID for sure. And when I say we, I mean I need to do a better job of promoting our online reporting system. We brought that out and did a little bit of marketing around it. But we let it drop, and that is not being utilized. And our goal with that is to pick up the crime that people don't feel is important enough to bother us with reporting, but it's really important information for us to know. And as I've said before, it also allows us to tie things together. While somebody might just have something that went missing from their yard, that may tie into another file and we can tie that back. So that's one of our goals over the next little while, is to sort of get a little bit more uptake on the online reporting system to capture that information.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so is there anything further from members of council? Okay, well, thank you very much for your time with us this evening, and all the best to yourself and all the other members at the detachment, and thank you for all that you're doing. We certainly appreciate all of you.
Thank you.
Okay, council, I'll just look for a resolution, please, that council receive the April 2021 RCMP quarterly report for information. Moved by Councillor Beto, seconded by Councillor Bateman. All those in favor, please. And that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, so next up is item 10, report of the Chief Administrative Officer. So Mr. McInnes.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do not have any strategic updates today, but I do have a couple of operational updates that I think council should hear. We posted for both the engineering tech and the land development tech position, and we're just not getting a really good pool of candidates, qualified candidates. So we are going back to the market and we're going to repost those two positions. I don't know whether it's just increased competition between local governments right now, or perhaps it's something that's COVID related, but we're certainly hoping that this is not a long-term trend, and when we post again here, we'll get a better pool of qualified candidates. Same with our building inspectors. We haven't went the formal route of posting for a building inspector, but we've asked everyone to sort of check their networks to see if there's anyone who could help us out on a temporary basis, and just nothing is coming through. So we have okayed some overtime for our current inspectors, but we're going to be watching that really closely and managing it, because we certainly don't want to be burning people out that are in short supply right now. So just a couple things on the recruiting front that I thought it was important for council to hear. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. McInnes. And I think depending on what that outcome is, you may need to bring a report accordingly when we learn more. Okay. So next up, folks, is our public question and comment period. So Ms. Mushada.
I do not have anyone registered to speak to the public question and comment period, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask how many folks are watching the YouTube at the moment?
I'm sorry, we don't have that information available right now.
Okay, well, if you do, I just like those sort of facts. Okay, so next up is item 12 and our consent agenda. So this is all item. Actually, it's just 12.1, the correspondence to be accepted accordingly. So I'll look for someone to move that item number 12.1 be adopted by general consent. Moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Bateman. Any discussion items? See none, all in favor, please. And that's unanimous. Thank you. So next up is item 13.1, and this is our audited 2020 financial statements. And I believe a member of our audit team is available and will be presenting on this. So I'll turn it to staff, please, to guide us through the presentation. Okay, staff, would you like to introduce our auditor and bring us through the presentation, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, there is Julie Robinson here from KPMG who will be presenting some information on the District of Sooke 2020 audited financial statements. Go ahead, Julie.
Okay, thank you, Rachel, and good evening, everyone. The District of Sooke's draft financial statements have been included in the agenda package. I'll not present all 27 pages at the moment, and I'll just run through some notes for you all. KPMG has substantively completed the audit of the district's financial statements. There are no outstanding matters related to the completion of the audit, other than the acceptance of the financial statements by Council this evening. We have prepared a clean, unqualified audit opinion, and this indicates there are no material misstatements in the financial statements. A couple of comments on the financial results for 2020. Of course, COVID-19 did have its impacts to the district's results. We saw some income declines for casino revenue, and that there were reduced rates of interest on the investment income in the year. We also saw costs increase in protective services due to some overtime and additional resources needed to keep residents safe. The province did provide additional support in the year. A COVID-19 Safe Restart grant of around 2.9 million was received, and this will be used to offset ongoing impacts of COVID-19 into 2021 and beyond. The province also deferred the timing of payment of school tax from last summer 2020 into January 21, and this helped to preserve around 2 million in cash flow during that time. The annual surplus after following the accounting rules for 2020 was 8.5 million. Most of this was from non-cash donated assets. This makes up some land and infrastructure from new developments in the area, and this was around 6.1 million. The other cash surplus in 2020 was invested into capital replacement. We saw that 3 million was spent on capital additions during the year. It's related mostly to the new fire engine, some sewer upgrades, and the Demanial Creek Connector project. So overall, the district's accumulated surplus at the end of 2020 was 122 million. This is made up of 112 million invested in capital assets. So this is the monies that have already been spent. There is 10 million in restricted surplus. This is money set aside for future projects, leaving 666,000 of unrestricted operating surplus. Other than the financial results, as part of our audit procedures, we did not note any significant or material deficiencies in internal control, and there's no unadjusted audit differences remaining. And we have noted that the district continues to make improvements to its financial policies. Finally, I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank the finance team for the assistance providing during the audit process this year. This was the second year we have performed the audit entirely remotely, and we received full access to documentation to support and complete the audit fully. And this has helped us achieve this overall positive result. And that was the comments that I had for you this evening.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Robinson. I don't know about you, Council, but I accidentally turned my video off and then I turned it on. So it's on, but on the screen in front of me, it looks like it's off. So from your viewing, is it off or is it on?
I have both of you. I have one of you off and one of you on. Are you on two devices?
No.
Oh, well.
It's off on the feed.
Okay, so I don't know what to do about that because it's on from my end. So are we able to take the sort of box away and can we redo that? Like something obviously needs to be reset here because it's on.
Can you try turning your camera off and then on again?
I got knocked out as well and I had to come back. Did anybody else get knocked out?
No, I saw that you left. I've just done that. It's not fixing it. So can you stop this piece here and redo it so that we can see if that fixes it?
Mayor Tate, when
There
you
you
took the video off, it looked like you came back up again, which doesn't make sense, but that's what it looked like.
Yeah, it's still not working.
I would suggest you leave the meeting and rejoin it. We'll just take a recess for a moment.
Okay, so seeing that it's 8:10, how about we all take a 5-minute health break and then we can try to fix all of this, get your water stretched, and we'll be back. Okay, thank you everyone. I'll see you at 8:15.
I can see you now. You're muted.
I'm muted. Okay, so video's working, audio's working.
Looks good.
All right, I have new glasses on the way, so now we'll just wait for the others.
Now we have the full screen version of you.
Yeah, and that's just too much, so. You're not moving into the box, though. There's Councillor Logan's joining me. That's better.
Just helping you out. There you go.
Thank you. Okay, that's much better.
I'm back.
Yeah.
Tony's looking a little pale now. Did you turn up your lights or something?
No, I put on this vest. That's about it.
It's just the way the light seems to be reflecting off of you.
No, I think it's reflecting off the vest. I guess I'll freeze.
Well, I suggest you know, it's fine if you want to put it on. We never all look our best on Teams. We understand that.
We can still tell it's you.
Yes. Okay, so seeing how we're all back, it's at 8:15. Staff, are you prepared for us just to get rolling since all of council is back?
Yes, Your Worship, ready to go.
Okay, perfect. So we left off receiving the presentation from our auditor, and I'll just then ask council if you have any questions of our auditor or from our district staff. Okay, it's pretty straightforward, so thank you. And the recommendation here is that council accept the draft financial statements of the District of Sooke for the year ended December 31st, 2020. So that's moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Logans. I'll call the question then. All those in favor, please. And that's unanimous. Okay, thank you very much for joining with us tonight, Ms. Robinson. Of course, you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you so wish, and we'll leave that up to you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Good evening.
Thank you. So next up, staff, or pardon me, council, is item 13.2, and this is the 2020 deferment penalties. So I'll ask staff if there's anything to comment on in addition to the report that you have here, have provided us with. Go ahead, Ms. Gray.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing to add to the report. Just want to clarify one point. Is I think the word "not" is missing earlier on in the report. So the just recommendation from staff is that it is not recommended to use COVID funds for these penalties. There are potentially other funds available should council consider that, but the same concerns would be there with the issues.
Okay, so thank you, Ms. Gray. Unfortunately, the letter received from the province is one I was actually quite frankly disappointed to receive that. So as you know, last year, I brought this forward as an advocacy item early on when we learned that some folks were hit financially because of COVID and the lockdowns, or just the the public health orders that were in place. And so we did bring this to the Minister of Finance and Municipal Affairs attention, and then the snap election occurred. So then we had to sort of restart all of that advocacy again. And then it took some time to receive this response. And so meanwhile, we know that some of the residents, as indicated in the staff report, have cleared out the penalty. Others, perhaps properties were sold, so then everything changed. But that still leaves some folks waiting. And so we've been waiting because we've been waiting for the minister to actually respond to this. And in my conversation that I had with the minister, it was expressed that more could have been done to avoid this from happening. And my pushback is, what could have been done? Everything was closed. Families couldn't visit one another. The library was shut. And we're talking about folks that are mainly over 80 that do not use a computer. So the ability to just go online and seek assistance is not available to someone who has never used a computer and certainly doesn't have one in their house. So while I appreciate where the staff perspective on this, I feel that residents were left behind. I'm frustrated that the province wouldn't let us just reverse these but we don't have the ability to do that. And this is where we needed the province to weigh in. Further, what's frustrated is some of the family members now have reached out to the province and we're told, oh, the local government can just reverse that. I'm like, well, that's not what they're telling us in writing. They're saying that we can't do that. And then the workaround that they have provided is that we could use the COVID relief funds to do this. So it's still accessing funds within our municipality to address this, when I feel that it was really the province. Now, I suppose something we could have done was change the payment date of property taxes. Some municipalities did that. However, some municipalities have different revenue and different demands. And in our case, we left it at July 2nd. Because we have obligations that needed to be met. So that, and then by the time we found out, it was too late for us to do anything because everything was set in place. So it's been a long time coming. And I know that staff has laid out options. I just tend to lean towards the recommendation that staff doesn't agree with. So I just want to open it up for any questions on this further, and then there is a recommended action, or would look for something different, but I would just like to get some just field out any questions from council first on this. Councillor St. Pierre, then Bateman.
This is a question that fused into a comment, but it's mostly a question. I'm just curious as to, and I was in contact with someone who was directly involved and was quite stressed out by this whole situation. And so I have a lot of sympathy with our residents in terms of dealing with this, because it was not easy and they did what they could. So I understand where our mayor is coming from on this one for sure. However, I am concerned, and I would like a comment from staff whether or not this opens, they have reservations, and I'm wondering if this opens this up in terms of a slippery slope where we're having to assess financial hardship and then potentially use district funds when financial hardship comes into play. And how do we actually assess financial hardship in the future? And I'm curious, I'm concerned about the precedent, and I'm not sure what that would look like, and I'd like some comments from staff on that.
Thank you for your question. Through your worship, I get that's part of the challenge is I don't know how we would assess financial hardship, because that could be different for different families depending on their personal situation. So that's part of the challenge, is it would be difficult to just identify potential financial hardship people from just the people who just filed theirs late because of, you know, not doing with financial hardship. So yeah, that would definitely be a challenge, and I'd have to kind of look into privacy rights and things like that, of what kind of information we could possibly ask for, if that's the direction council would like to go in, of just forgiving penalties potentially for hardship situations. But yeah, it would definitely be a challenge, and I'd have to coordinate with our Freedom of Information staff just to confirm what we would be allowed to ask for if that's the direction council would like to go in.
Okay, thank you for that answer, Ms. Gray, and the question. Part of this, though, is that it wasn't necessarily hardship. It was because the province changed the system, and folks who had deferred for years and submitted everything on time were caught up in that change. And this is where the province said notices went out. But perhaps it was how that communication occurred and the inability for folks to access services. So where I struggle is that folks have paid everything on time. It's not necessarily hardship. It's the fact that the province changed the system and it wasn't easy to communicate. Our municipal office was also closed. We have folks now wearing masks, and so communication is already somewhat hampered in that regard. I see Mr. McInnes and then Councillor McMath, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. To Councillor St. Pierre, if we're talking property taxes, I think this is an anomaly because the assessment process is done by a third party. It's not done by us. And then the taxation piece, we don't have the ability to waive penalties. That can only be done by the province. So they've thrown it back at us in this instance, saying we can use our COVID fund, but I don't see this as being a challenge for us going forward, given the rules in place.
Do you have a follow-up? Go ahead, Councillor St. Pierre.
I just want to confirm my understanding if possible. So what I'm hearing is that normally this would be entirely the province's responsibility and entirely out of our hands regardless. This has been thrown back to us under unusual circumstances. The COVID funding is not necessarily the right avenue to deal with it, according to staff, but we're not expecting this to happen again because it's normally entirely in the province's jurisdiction and in their playing field. Is that correct?
That's correct. And there's rules around that, in that we can't just one-off. The province won't one-off reducing penalties. They have to do it so everyone that's in the same position gets the same consideration. So it's just a little bit of an anomaly. It was a little bit of a perfect storm with the process being changed with COVID, and now with the COVID relief and the province saying, well, local government, you can use your COVID relief fund for this particular purpose. But I don't see it being an issue long-term going forward.
Thank you.
And part of that, just to add to what Mr. McInnes says, is that the system is now changed, and folks that defer will automatically, they can click on like automatic deferral, and as long as everything is current, it'll automatically happen. So it's sort of reset itself to how it used to work before they changed the system. So that's why that's why it's just odd. It's this one time. So why change the system during COVID? But obviously this was well in the works prior to everything happening. And this is where some folks were caught up. Councillor McMath?
I'm just uncomfortable with us pulling money from the fund to pay for this for such a small percentage of the community that was unable to complete it. It just doesn't sit well with me. I support the advocacy piece, but it's not ours to take care of, and I have concerns if we step forward and we put those funds forward, then like, without being in this role, if I were another community member, say it was more challenging for me this year to complete that, if I found out that my neighbor got theirs paid for by the district, I would be furious and I would be upset, and I would say it was difficult, but I did these things. I followed, you know, I made sacrifices to make sure that I got it in on time, and then essentially that person is being penalized for making sure that that happens. And so I feel the same way that you feel with us advocating and you trying to push back and getting such a disappointing response, and then for them to turn to say to a community member, well, your local government can handle that. That's incredibly frustrating, but I'm just not comfortable with us doling that out. But I completely hear and understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, no, I totally hear what you're saying, Councillor McMath, which is why I'm so annoyed and frustrated by this. Any other questions from members of council? Councillor Beddoes, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say this is twice this year, but I concur with Councillor McMath on this. I think there's a lot of people did get it in right, and it does. The optics aren't good for that. But I don't know how many of those are actually hardship cases or just cases. So once again, I agree with her.
Yeah, and I wouldn't know that these were actual hardship cases. The ones that I had spoke with is they were all seniors well over 80 without access to a computer and without access to a family member. And so there was just the fumbling, and then our staff did their utmost to communicate and to help. It's just communication was hampered because we're locked up, and you know, with face coverings, and in some cases, or talking through the door or through plexiglass, it's just difficult, or you know, ideally over the phone. So this is where I know that these folks, there's certainly some I've talked to, they've always paid everything on time. So now it's the case, almost principle, like, why should I have to pay this penalty when I did everything right? It's just a handful that have fallen into this strange anomaly. And it's just upsetting. And the thing is, if they don't pay the penalty, then of course they won't be able to defer in future years. And so I think that's where some have paid, and now we're coming up to a time where they'll need to find that money to do this. And so they've been waiting for us to deliberate over this and to come to a conclusion. Okay, so seeing nothing further, I'm going to Councillor Logans, look for a resolution. Go ahead, please, Councillor Logans. You just muted yourself.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to make the motion that council adopt the, oh, hold on. I jumped ahead of myself. That council receive the report for information. Was that it? No, wait.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's it.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's been moved. Is there a seconder? Councillor Beddoes is seconding. So on the resolution, Councillor Logans, would you like to speak to the resolution that you've made?
No, Councillor McMath said it very well.
Councillor Beddoes?
Yeah, once again, I don't like to get this too popular, but yes, I think Councillor McMath did state my feelings. So yeah, I'm okay with seconding it.
Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, I had a quick question through you to Ms. Gray. How many Sooke residents did defer their taxes in 2020?
I don't know through your worship. I don't know for sure off the top of my head. I believe it was about 170 residents in Sooke are normally on the deferment list. I can confirm that number for you and let council know later on. by email if needed.
And obviously this 10% late filing penalty varies, but do you have a sense of how much for these 3 remaining individuals we're talking about here?
Through your worship, it would depend on the amount of their taxes. I believe it's around $400 for each property listed.
Okay.
We just can't provide the individual properties.
All right, thank you.
And so the question then that I have to Ms. Gray is, should this proceed? As I understand it, we have about 5 remaining? Or was it 3 that are still outstanding?
Through your worship, at time of writing the report, there was 3 penalties still outstanding that hadn't been paid. As you had stated earlier, though, there has been ongoing communication with the residents who had penalties and staff encouraging them to do what they can to pay those penalties throughout the years, because as you mentioned, they won't be able to defer 2021 taxes if there's a penalty outstanding this year. So the number used to be quite a bit higher. It's down to 3 residents that haven't paid the penalties as of today.
Okay, thank you. And then in this case, following this, would it be then that staff will reach out to these remaining residents tomorrow?
Correct. Sorry, I should leave my camera on. Correct. I will just, staff, once council determines what their resolution will be, staff will reach out to the residents affected and just provide an update on council's resolution from tonight.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Gray. Councillor Lajeunesse?
Yeah, so there are 3 properties with an average of about 400 owing each. Is that right?
Approximately. I can pull up the list in a second here.
So yeah, I mean, is there another pot that we can draw from? Can we draw from council contingency, since this is a one-off, obviously, because the province changed the rules midstream, and it created a hardship for these people, and if we don't help them, then the hardship will be continued from now till eternity. But given that it is a one-off situation, can we come up with money to help them out from another pot of money?
Through your worship to Council Lajeunesse, yes, that's definitely an option if council would like to use council contingency to forgive these penalties. Again, just the staff recommendation would be to include all of the 25 applicants that received a penalty, not just the 3 with an outstanding penalty, because the messaging from staff to these residents have been encouraging them to pay. And if there was a favorable result from either the province or from council, then we would provide them a credit for their penalty. Just we didn't want them being at risk of not being able to defer 2021's taxes.
Okay, see some more hands. Councillor McMath and St. Pierre, please.
Again, it doesn't matter what pot it comes out from. I don't think that we should be paying for those missing pieces. You have 3 residents out of 15,000. Regardless, I feel emotionally the same way that we all do here, and that we want to make it happen. We want to make it work. It's just as soon as you open that door for us to start footing these bills, you're setting a precedence that we can't do that. And I am incredibly empathetic, and I know what you're saying. It's just you can't base it off emotion. You have to look at like logically what is the correct thing to do here. And it's, again, if you open that piece, it's going to open up a whole bunch more stuff. So it's like best of intentions, but it's just, I don't think that's the right call, regardless of what bucket it comes out of.
Thank you, Councillor McMath. Councillor St. Pierre?
Yeah, to follow up on what Councillor McMath was saying, I feel that this is an issue of fairness, and part of us wants to be very fair to those 3 people, or to the people who weren't able to handle the changes and did the best they could and fell between the cracks. But at the same time, we also have to be fair to the entire community. And as Councillor McMath has pointed out, a lot of people made a lot of efforts to make the changes. Our staff has worked hard to actually get people on board so that they can actually get their deferrals the next year. I think that we're going to need to be unfair to someone. And it's either going to be the entire community where the people who have made the efforts and succeeded are not being treated fairly, or the people who did the best they could and fell between the cracks are being treated fairly. And I think what Councillor McMath is suggesting is that we need to be held accountable to the larger community. And I think I would tend to agree.
Okay. All right, thank you, Council, for all of the discussion on this. I'll call the question then. All those in favor, please. And I believe that is unanimous. Thank you. Still frustrated, but I appreciate everyone's comments on this, and I'm very disappointed in the province. Okay, so moving on to 13.3, we have several January to March 2021 quarterly updates, as well as a variance report. So just ask staff to comment if there's anything further on these. Here for your information. Mr. McInnes, anything to introduce or add? Ms. Gray?
Sorry about that. Apologies, I was clicking on the wrong meeting notice there, or camera icon. Let me try again here. I just have a small little PowerPoint I was going to go through to supplement the information, because Q1 isn't super exciting with expenses and revenue coming in. Q2 will obviously be the more exciting report with property tax information being available, collection rates, etc., that staff can report back on, as well as some of the capital projects that have just been starting off in the Q1 should hopefully have some progress updates we can provide in Q2 here. So just bear with me for 1 second. I will try and share my screen. Let's see. Does that work? Do you see it? No, you're probably seeing the wrong thing.
We can see it, but we can also see the notes and everything. That's good. That's good like that. Thank you.
Perfect.
Yep,
Thank
that's
you.
perfect.
Apologies. Okay, so because as I mentioned, 2021 Q1 doesn't have a lot of interesting things, I thought I'd just provide a timely synopsis of just some highlights of 2020 and further adding on to the information provided by KPMG here. So just some of the revenue highlights for 2020, as mentioned and everyone's quite aware of, 2.9 million came from the province for the in November there of 2020 for the COVID-19 Safe Restart Grant. The district received to date, or up to the end of 2020, approximately $48,000 in COVID expense reimbursements, and this included $30,000 in payroll reimbursements for staff's overtime, as well as $18,000 in additional increased expenses throughout the year. The district received $363,000 in investment income, which is good, and over budget from our $225,000 budget, I believe. So that's a nice trend to see continuing on, and throughout the year and entering into 2022's budget cycle, staff will provide council with further information on investment options and looking for recommendations. But currently, I just wanted to highlight that our investments are all with MFA, and they're all in fossil fuel-free funds at this time. The district received $660,000 in building permit fees in 2020, which is great. Some of those funds are used, which is definitely over budget, and I just wanted to highlight some of those funds are used to fund other expenses and projects that come up during the year. Like, for example, the hydro servicing of Lot A wasn't a budgeted expense. So receiving additional building permit revenue over and above budget is a nice buffer to have when these expenses come up to use to offset that. As KPMG mentioned, there was $6.1 million in developer donated assets which is great. 3.5 million in land, 2.6 million in roads and sidewalks and sanitary sewers. We purchased engine 1 with a 5-year equipment loan, and started work on the centrifuge project at the wastewater treatment plant, which was an additional $800,000 project as well. I wanted to highlight there was at the end of the year just under a $200,000 reduction in casino revenue due to the closure of the casino. The district had received the $62,000 you see on the financial statements was received for Q1, and then no additional funding has been received since. Just a little highlight on expenses. For 2020, there was a reduction under budget of $113,000 in property maintenance savings. That was delayed due to staffing resources and COVID. One of the staff members that's was instrumental in setting up the COVID policies and procedures around the office also had this portfolio under them. So just in the interest of staffing time and resources, this was one thing that wasn't a top priority last year, but definitely will be looked at in greater detail in 2021 with the hopes to start tackling some of the needed property maintenance to the building here, to Municipal Hall. As Staff Sergeant mentioned, the RCMP was almost fully staffed in 2020, so that just increased the staffing cost over budget, as well as increased as people may or may not know, the RCMP does not have a contract there. So every year we get staff receive amounts that we need to accrue for potential payment when the new union contractor agreement is signed and retroactive payments are made to existing members. So that has just increased the accrual that we have made for that as well. And of course, there was increased fire costs and overtime costs just due to COVID. Some of that got reimbursed from the province. Some of it was just regular ongoing costs. Additional expense, as I mentioned earlier, was $208,000 to service hydro on Lot A. Of that, we received a contribution from Viral to offset some of those costs. There was an increase of about $30,000 over budget in road maintenance cost, and that was due to some salting. I believe, if I remember correctly, we had a snowstorm back in February of 2020, so there was additional road work and salting that needed to be completed over and above their regular contract work. And exciting things happening at the treatment plant, and that there was lots of work being completed in 2020. And so their consultant costs were increased for that year to complete some work on the SCADA software system updates, which were needed, and as well as sewer capacity modeling work and the continuation of the centrifuge upgrade, which was completed in Q1 of 2021. As we do more of these quarterly updates, I'll provide some more information to council on kind of the timing of when payments happen throughout the year, because there's certain things that happen just once a year and things that happen every month, other payments, and the payments that happen just once a year or semi-monthly or semi-annually happen at different times of the year. So as we do more of this reporting to council, we'll just provide some updates and information on some of these payments as they start occurring throughout the year. So for CAO, Council, Communications, and Office Admin, the payments for community grants will be processed in Q2 here. The payments for Canada Day is obviously to be determined at this point. And another item, a larger item in that grouping is the Cio Legal Budget, and that's just spent as needed. Legislative services is fairly stable. Payments just occur throughout the year. You'll see in an election year, they'll have a spike, obviously during election time, of increased spending, and that's reflected with an increased budget in those years as well. For financial services, the Q1 has a larger year to expenses because there is annual insurance that is paid in Q1, as well as approximately half of the software licensing costs are occurring in Q1. Planning and development, again, is pretty stable. The one difference and blip in their payments this year will be the OCP budget sits with that department now. So when payments are made to that dialogue consultant, you'll see those reflected in the future reporting. And then just quickly for the rest of the departments, operations, policing, fire, and sewer, they're fairly stable with how their expenses occur throughout the year. Road maintenance is an ongoing one for operations, and then they charge us, the district is charged extra fees for roadside garbage pickups of mattresses, et cetera, things like that. Those are over and above the existing contract that we have with our supplier. Policing payments occur throughout the year. They have a different year end than the district does, so there's always a bit of a lag this time of year in receiving their final invoices for the year. But you'll notice definitely in Q2 there'll be a catch up of the year-to-date payments. Similar with fire, payments occur throughout the year. One of the largest sections of their budget, of course, would be the remuneration and paid on call, and those are usually stable throughout the year. And then Q4 is kind of where we look at things a little closer with limits on carrying over overtime, et cetera. Again, similar with sewer payments occur throughout the year, and the debt principal payment for the sewer, which expires in 2026, occurs in September. So I will hopefully stop sharing my screen. And that will conclude my presentation. Happy to answer any questions from council.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Gray, for the quarterly update. Look to members of council for any questions of staff. Councillor St. Pierre, go ahead.
Hopefully something quick. I noticed in the revenues, the 6.1 million donated assets from developers. And it's just a clarification thing because unlike all the other items, it's not really spendable. So how's it revenue?
Through your worship, it's revenue because it's added to our asset base. So it's an asset of the district. It's considered a non-cash asset of the district. So it's a piece of property now we own. In theory, I guess you could sell it at some point or something maybe, but it's an asset of the district. So that's why it's recognized as revenue, because the district is now better off for having this asset in our inventory and available to us to use. So that's just a mechanism to record that revenue.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else from members of council? Okay, so then the recommendation is that council receive the report for information. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Logans. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please. And that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Item 13.4 is Climate Action Committee member resignation, and with a recommendation here. It's pretty straightforward. So the recommendation is that council directs staff to advertise for the Climate Action Committee vacancy in accordance with the committee structure and function policy C0-007. So I'm just going to read that out. It seems straightforward unless anyone has any questions. Councillor St. Pierre, you're prepared to move that? Okay. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor McMath. Any discussion on this item? Okay, seeing none, all in favor, please. And none opposed. Thank you. So next up, 13.5, the Land Use and Development Committee recommendations. So I'll just ask staff. We see there's a lengthy report here as well as a recommendation out of the committee. Mr. Palo, go ahead, please.
Thank you. So the main pieces I just want to highlight is just in regards to some discrepancies in our zoning bylaw versus what the ALC is proposing. Back in 2019, there was a number of changes that the ALC made, and you'll see it attached in your agenda, Bulletin 5. And throughout a number of different quarters throughout 2020, the ALC continued reviewing their policies and considering amendments based on public input. And so now moving forward into 2021, the most recent deadline was July 31st regarding manufactured homes. That's one of the discussion pieces that came up for considerable feedback from our Land Use and Development Committee. And that was the issue within our zoning bylaw that an additional dwelling on ALR parcels would need to be for farm help, as it was previously stated through the ALC Act. However, moving forward, the ALC is considering that it would not include just farm help, but be for any other uses, so such as having another family member reside on the parcel within a manufactured home as a second dwelling. So right now our RU1 and our RU3 zones only recognize that the additional dwelling would be for farm help, and property owners on ALR land are inquiring as to how the district is going to be approaching this, and we since have had a building permit application applied for, and it's been put on hold right now because of this matter, and for council's consideration to potentially give direction to staff to make a zoning bylaw amendment proposal to come forward to council to change this and recognize that it could be for any type of additional dwelling use as a manufactured home, with the potential change that the ALC will recognize this moving forward. They've extended this deadline now, where they're anticipating the deadline to be extended past July and up until December of this year. But ALR owners are hopeful that this is going to be made permanently. So just to recognize, and in keeping track with options for affordable housing, and knowing our housing needs report recognizes that a manufactured home is probably the only affordable option for medium income households, that by restricting this, we are creating an issue for ALR parcel owners to have additional family members reside on their parcels. So this is one of the pieces that we're looking at, and is brought forward separately as a staff recommendation as well to the land use committee's recommendation. But what we're looking for is to continue tracking the provincial changes that are being considered, but right now as well, staff bringing forward as soon as possible that amendment to the RU1 and the RU3 zone for those manufactured homes.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Mr. Paulo. Any questions from members of staff or from members of council? Pardon me. Okay, so I'm just going to ask our corporate staff, there's two sets here. I see committee recommendations and then the staff recommendation. So we need to move all of this. Can it all be moved together, or do they need to be separate? Just to our corporate staff, can these be moved as a block, or do they need to be separate?
I would move the committee recommendation separate from the staff recommendation.
Okay, so we'll start with that one. So that is that council received the following recommendations from the Land Use and Development Committee, that the Land Use and Development Committee recommends council expeditiously adopt the forthcoming provincial changes to residential use in the ALR into the Sooke zoning bylaw, and that the adoption of the provincial changes be planned for in the current official community plan OCP review, and that the Land Use and Development Committee recommends council forward the request to the OCP Advisory Committee for consideration in the OCP review. So do we have a mover for that, please? Moved by Councillor Lajeunesse and seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Any comments from members of council?
Nope.
Councillor St. Pierre?
Yes, I would like to quickly just respond. First of all, to what I think some people are going to be concerned about additional properties on ALR. I would like to make it clear that in Sooke, we do not have large parcels of farmland. And traditionally, the smaller parcels that we have been farmed by a large number of people, by extended families and so on and so forth. We're going to have to do the best we can to make sure that this doesn't turn into a massive opportunity to just keep on building buildings on farmland. But this is actually going back to a way of actually farming and actually making our land agriculturally productive. Unless we actually allow people onto the land, there just aren't enough in the way of wages producing food for people to actually live off-site from farms and then farm. So I think we're going in the right direction here. I look forward to actually seeing what staff has to say and what further comes out of the ALC. But I think this is an appropriate direction.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor St. Pierre. Anything further? So then I'll call the question, please. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. The second part is that council directs staff to include a zoning bylaw amendment to support manufactured homes as an additional dwelling unit when located on agricultural reserve parcels as identified by the Agricultural Land Commission Act. So I'll look for a mover by Councillor Logans and seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Anything to add, Councillor Logans? No. Councillor St. Pierre, any comments? Anything from anyone else? Okay, so I'll call the question then. All those in favor, please. And that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay. So this is where we had a change. So 13.7 before 13.6. So this is on the official community plan, scope and direction. So Mr. McInnes, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Little bit of a victim of timing with this report. The report was required to be published before the OCP Advisory Committee meeting on Friday, and had a great committee meeting on Friday. And I think we worked through some of the stresses that I thought we would be talking about tonight. But just in the report is basically, there's three big pieces in the report. And I thought that we were going to be talking about possibly extending our schedule and possibly allocating more budget. But I think that, and I'll defer to Councillor Beddoes and Mr. Paulo after my presentation to confirm this, but I think we're good now until the draft OCP is put before the committee and the committee brings their recommendations to council on that draft. But there's some work we have to do in the interim. I think that there's some learning for us on the admin side about our committees and the way we structure our committees, and in particular being much more intent on making sure that we get the terms of reference right, and then making sure that that first orientation meeting with our committees are a little bit more informed. So we got to do a little bit of catch-up work on that now. So the first big chunk is the Local Government Act. So the committee really wants to have a better understanding of what are the mandatory things that the OCP requires, and then what are those optional things, so that they can make really good informed decisions to council when the draft comes forward to council. And part of that as well is our growth projections and where those growth projections come from. And do we have the ability to influence those growth projections through our regional context statement and the regional growth strategy that the CRD has. So just a little bit more information on those growth projections and how we can maybe manage those growth projections or change those growth projections. And then what are the policy tools that we have to make sure that those growth projections or those numbers that end up in the OCP are managed properly. The second piece is the climate action goals, and the committee wants to understand a little bit better, the Climate Change Accountability Act and where do our marching orders come from. What I heard on Friday, and again, I'll defer to Matthew and Councillor Beddoes after I'm done. But what I heard on Friday was the committee wants to be more of a partner with the provincial government and understand what the provincial government goals are in climate change and how they can support the provincial government in meeting their goals, as opposed to setting up as a adversarial type of relationship where we're pushing the provincial government. But really just understanding what their goals are and finding ways for us to support them in meeting their goals. And then the last part was just around the committee and how we've positioned the committee. There are some things that we need to put in front of the committee. For example, I'm going to suggest that the OCP Advisory Committee and our MOU working group with the South Nation should have a joint meeting to share some knowledge and some information between those two. So again, when the draft OCP comes to council, the OCP Advisory Committee has better information to make their recommendations on. And then just the last thing is there may be some things not being addressed through the public commentary that council may want to see. I know that we have had discussions leading up to the OCP around things like the gateway and casinos and the highway commercial through there, but those things are not being addressed through the public commentary right now, and perhaps they should be. So again, I thought we were going to be talking about something different, but the meeting on Friday really seemed to get some clarity on the work that the committee would like to see and the tools that they need to make really good informed recommendations to council when the draft is put in front of council. So I'll leave it there and open it up for any questions if there are any, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. McInnes. I guess the one question I have, and then I'll go to Councillor Beddoes as the chair, is there, from your staff report, there is a recommendation here. So given that you had to provide this report ahead of the meeting, is your recommendation is still in order then?
I believe so. My understanding is the staff and consultants will endeavor to get the draft to the OCP advisory committee by mid-June. So they should have plenty of time to do their work and make solid recommendations to council by the end of July.
Okay, thank you. So I'll go to Councillor Beddoes. Is there anything you would like to share just as chair and liaison to the OCP?
Yeah, actually, there is something I'd like to share, and it's going to take me a minute because prior to our meeting on Friday, as you know, some of our committee, well, all our committee members had some very big concerns. And fortunately, with our CAO and staff on Friday, we did work through a lot of them. But what I did is I asked the entire committee if they could provide for me, tell me what's going well and what's not going well. All of them responded, but I did get one very articulate note from Terry Crystal, who basically captured it all. If you like, I can give you an update where we are with it. Just take me a minute. I got 6 bullet items on one and 3 on the other. Would that be the council's wish?
Sure, go ahead, please. This is a good time for that.
Okay, now, again, in prep for this meeting, I asked, so a bit of an update. So what has gone well? And basically, excellent collegial committee, knowledgeable and engaged. And this isn't my writing, excellent chair as well. Effective, inclusive community survey progress capturing a wide range of residential population and community interest groups. Significant community engagement, ample feedback to support our visions, goals, and strategies. The survey process elicited a great many thoughtful responses. Professional, competent, and diligent DOS staff, personnel, managing the OCP development. Staff are clearly dedicated and hardworking. Competent, accommodating, responsive professional consultants. Very, very pleased with the consultants. Our draft OPC foundation document with the potential for a focused, Sooke-centric official community plan. So I thought that was a pretty good thing, and they all basically agree with that there are a lot of things that have gone well. But now here's something that maybe hasn't gone well, but are being addressed by staff and our CAO. Expectations of the roles and responsibility of the OCP Advisory Committee is a primary area of consternation. Committee members believe they need to be familiar with the outcomes of all discussions having implications on community planning, including matters that relate to government, inclusive of the Sooke Nation, currently contemplating building project, infrastructure projects, and climate initiatives. An understanding of these issues is seen as imperative to the committee's ability to provide accurate advice to mayor and council. The committee contends it does not feel adequately informed. We don't have all the information to carry forth, but I'm told that this is coming. The committee has not been given sufficient time to consider much of the material prepared for the OCP process. There has been limited pre-meeting time to prepare for presentations requiring committee endorsement. Some survey material went out public before committee scrutiny. As such, the committee has felt their potential contributions compromised. The pandemic has prevented the committee from meeting in person, compromising debate and dialogue. The committee members have been limited in their ability to connect with the broader community and others relevant to their preparation of the OCP. Now, with that being said, again, this happened before our meeting. This stuff came in. My understanding in talking with our CAO and staff that a lot of these things that have bothered us in the past will be resolved for the future. I am very optimistic. The timelines, again, we were considering maybe we needed more time, but I have to concur with our CAO. I think we can do this. It is going to be a bit of a slugfest, and but the committee is committed to getting this done and getting it done right. And that's the thing that I wanted to stress. They don't want a half-baked measure. They want to get it right. They're understanding that there was a lot of holes in the past OCP, and they're looking forward to comparing the two and making sure the document moving forward will make Sooke a better place. That was basically what I came up with on the other matter, and I really don't want to get Councillor Bateman all upset, but we felt that the more of a proper line within the District of Sooke strives to work with our provincial, federal, and local governments to achieve the provincial goal of 50% reduction in greenhouse gases by 2030. We thought that was, you know, a better statement. We're a little concerned about how we get the 7% per year. So I don't know where we go with that. I think that it'll work itself out. I'm not overly concerned about it. I did appreciate the Climate Action Committee and their ability to work on this problem, because it is a very serious problem. We're all aware of it. The committee is very much aware of it as well. The hard part is making it happen, and we're trying to produce a document that we're going to be another 6 months at it, and then it's going to last for 10 years or so. So it's an interesting thing, but we're very committed as a group to getting this done and getting it done right. So that's my update. If there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to stall or deflect them or whatever I want. No, go ahead.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much for that update, Councillor Beddoes. Councillor McMath, I see you have your hand up.
Thank you so much for chairing that group and for all the time that everyone is contributing to it. In regards to pieces like the Climate Action Committee, their group, their recommendations, their suggestions, their benchmarks that they're wanting the community to hit, I'll just use them as an example. The entirety of that goal does not rest on the OCP shoulders. So I'm getting a little bit concerned that the OCP's group is going like a little bit beyond what they need to in some regards. Like, I love the idea that they really want to dig in and do it right. I appreciate that. But for example, the Climate Action Committee's target goals, that doesn't solely rest on the OCP. They want to work with your group to try to achieve those, but it's not solely on your group. It falls into many other facets of the District of Sooke. So I don't want the group to get too hung up on minutia like that. And then in regards to working with other levels of government, it's an OCP committee. That's not really their function, so to speak. I want them to work with the ECDEV, I want them to work with development, and there's pieces where bylaws or definitions or federal provincial mandate is not supported in the OCP, and there should be clarity that way, but sort of looking to take on a role of advocacy and pieces like that, or how that group can support council and those advocacy pieces. I don't think that's that group's function as well. So my only concern is that the group is so smart and so educated and so determined that they're just going a little bit beyond the scope of what I think we need them to put their skill set uses to.
Yeah, an answer to that is you're right about many things there. One is I don't think we're going to go overboard on it. I mean, I know it's a very serious issue, and we're looking for anything that we can do in the OCP to make it happen. But we are very, very much aware that the biggest greenhouse gas emitters in the world are not basically at the municipal level. We certainly have to do our best at the municipal level to mitigate those and get those numbers down. And we're all of us, council, staff, and the people of Sooke are very committed to that. So I don't see us getting in the weeds on that. I think there's a tremendous amount of information that we have to go through, and one that just was brought up tonight about the gateway and things like that we have not addressed. It has not come up in some of the surveys. we got a lot to do, but I hear you, Councillor McMath, and I can assure you that this committee, as you said, are some very, very bright people, and they're not going to get caught in the weeds on this. They have a pretty good understanding where they're going with it. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Councillor St. Pierre.
Thank you, and thank you very much for that update, Councillor Beddoes. I have a question perhaps for staff on this, and that has to do with the intent of the OCP in general, and it might shed some clarity on what might be happening with climate action and also with Mr. Paulo's recommendations or what we put forward in terms of land use and farmland. At this point in time, I don't believe that we have a strong food security component in the existing OCP structure, similar to what happened in the previous OCP. But we do have an agricultural plan that was adopted and that I'm assuming is actually going to plug into the OCP as a living document. I think we're also meant to have a climate action plan that would potentially fill in some of the blanks that wouldn't necessarily be directly in the OCP, to create a living document where, you know, as new benchmarks come in, as new information comes in, as new strategies come in, we can actually update without having to junk our OCP. Now, I'd like to have that confirmed, but I believe that is the case. Is that not?
You may have to restate the question, Councillor St. Pierre.
My question is basically, as I understand it, we're looking at a lean and mean OCP that focuses on land use and leaves things like master planning for transportation, master planning for parks, different other elements like that, including a climate action plan, potentially the agricultural plan, and so on and so forth, outside the document, but referenced by the document, in order to allow the document to have more shelf life and to stay relevant. The document itself is meant to be a vision that can then be actualized through our bylaws and so on and so forth to basically guide land use planning. This would mean that when it comes to things like the climate or the ag plan, the committee doesn't necessarily have to have all the answers, because those answers are going to be in further documents that are going to be evolving and continuously being refined. And I'd just like to confirm that understanding.
Sure. So that will be one of the micro workshops that I have envisioned with the OCP Advisory Committee. So on page 2 of my report, you've got the 4 points that are requirements in the OCP, mapping and those types of things. You need housing, you need greenhouse gas emissions, and because the CRD has a regional growth strategy, we need a regional context statement. So those are the 4 things that the legislation says are required in the OCP. And then there are a bunch of optional things. So we'll have that workshop with the committee so that the committee can make informed recommendations to council on those items. But council needs to understand that those recommendations are coming as well, and that council, you know, if council needs some more information on that process and what that looks like, so when those recommendations come to council, they can receive them in a knowledgeable way. We may have to do some work with council around that as well.
Thank you, Mr. McInnes. Over to Councillor Bateman.
All right, thanks for that report from you, Mr. McInnes, and Councillor Beddoes. Looks like things are really going in good directions. I've attended a number of your OCP meetings and good dialogue. I can see some frustration, but it sounds like things are moving forward really efficiently. So the two things I need to address as the Climate Action Committee liaison is the that 50% target, which we agreed on unanimously a few weeks back. Councillor Beddoes, could you reiterate what the committee's stance was on that 50%?
Well, basically, I don't know if there's a stance so much, but there's a bit of frustration in that, you know, we would certainly like to do that, but we also need to put in the OCP. We've only got it for 6 months, and then it's a living document. Some tangible things on how we're going to achieve that 7% and you know, 50% into, you know, in 9 years' time. And it was felt that, you know, the committee basically says, well, you know, how on earth are we going to do that? So a lot of that, as some of us have seen, and we're still working through this, is out of our control. We certainly will want to do whatever we can, you know, reasonably with the citizens. And the citizens are giving us input too. It's not just the Climate Action Committee. We have a lot of information coming in. So we're a little bit frustrated as to figure out just exactly how to do that. So there was just a suggestion that, and you know, I know council passed that motion and that's what we have to live with. But I mean, I thought that a better one, and I'll read it out again, the District of Sooke strive to work with the province, federal government, and local governments to achieve the provincial goal of 50% reduction of greenhouse gases by 2030. So that, to me, said that we're committed to the 50% reduction. It's just that we're also committed that it's not our reduction alone, that we need the help of all those levels of government. I think the most of that would come from the federal government. So I just thought that was a more workable statement. But again, it's what happens is when we bring this document to you, council, and we put something like that in, you do have the ability as a council to strengthen it or weaken it. But we're going to give you our best shot at what we feel is doable and tangible with the assistance of staff. They're very much committed to doing some workshops and working through this information. And there's a ton of information, just a ton of stuff. So I don't know if I've answered your question or not, but that's the best I got at the moment.
Yes, you have, Al. Councillor Beddoes, thank you. And I think all of us on the committee would absolutely back the statement of that 50% reduction being looked at on a multi-partner level. I'm encouraged to see that the Local Government Act does require a target plus policies and actions to achieve those set targets. And of course, this is what Sustainable Solutions Group has been hired to do. We already have, through our master plans, a number of really strong policies and actions that will get us some of the way there. I think I was a little disturbed to hear the phrase adversarial relationship. If we were to set a 50% from CAO McInnes with the province, I don't, you know, as Ms. Russell stated at the Committee of the Whole meeting, the BC Municipal Climate Leadership Council, led by the former UBCM President Arjun Singh, recommends that local governments in the province seek 50% reduction. And this is, it's felt that the province's target is a little low. And this is in fact because of the fact that they must factor in LNG emissions across the entire province. Here in Sooke, we don't have that issue. So we can join with the UN recommendation, the Joe Biden recommendation, and stick to a 50% target. And it sounds like your committee agrees. So it's not entirely on their shoulders by any means. It's identifying what is in fact in the works, what a citizen mobilization campaign can do, what heat pump promotion and mode shift to electric vehicles can do. So I think that's all great. The other piece in the report related to the second motion and the request for a meeting with the consultants and the steering committee. And in the last week, council, and I forwarded this to the data group, received a very intelligent, informed reply from Jeremy Murphy at Sustainable Solutions Group. Anna Russell is preparing a reply to that letter. She resonates with a lot of it and had some other comments around a few points. So, you know, rather than take up a lot of extra time and push the budget into the red, it's either Ms. Russell could have a simple phone call, Zoom call with Jeremy at Sustainable Solutions Group, and or it sounds like there will be a micro workshop coming up that perhaps Ms. Russell and her data group colleagues might be invited to join.
Are you
Okay.
asking me that?
Well, I'm just throwing it out there as an idea, as
Yeah.
a way to avoid
Councillor
the
Bateman,
costs.
we're just working through the next steps right now.
Yeah.
As you gather from what our CAO said and my statements is we've just basically had a little bit of an epiphany here, and we see where this was going off the rails. I personally feel, and I think our CAO and some of our members are listening tonight, that we are now heading back in the right direction. Some of the problem has come up with, I think that we had a very ambitious timeline set for us. And I think that the statement of duties that was sent out, the one that were sent to dialogue saying 6 meetings, and then the one sent to us saying that we're supposed to be involved in all of these meetings. And as you can see that we're not. So there's a little bit of a disconnect there, but that's in the past. The thing is, we are moving ahead here. We're taking in everybody's information. Transition Sooke gave us quite a big presentation. We don't necessarily always agree with everybody, but our job is to take that information and do the best job we can in getting that into a document. And it's what the people want, and they're being pretty good considering in the time of COVID to give us the information that we've gotten so far.
Okay, that sounds
Okay,
like
I see other councillors
Yeah, thank you
wanting
very
to
much
comment
for
here.
the
So
opportunity.
Councillor McMath, please. Councillor McMath, your hand's up.
Yeah, sorry, just give me a second. I don't really understand. I feel like it's getting overcomplicated again, because my understanding is that the Climate Action Committee is supposed to, through their work and their people, are bringing like clear recommendations on what Sooke can do to hit this target goal that they're putting forward to us. That's the work that they're supposed to be doing. That's not the work that the OCP is supposed to be doing. And then they bring those clear, measurable, bullet point tools to the OCP group, and then the OCP group injects some, if not all of them, into it. It's not the OCP's responsibility to hit the target thresholds that were set by that group that we accepted. And in the simplest of terms, like Sooke's #1 contribution to like damaging the environment, I would say in the most simplistic of terms, is the travel, because it's everybody driving everywhere. So in the simplest of terms, the only real strong way that the OCP is going to contribute to minimizing that environmental impact is to look at the advocation pieces around commercial and industrial spaces. And so that in tandem is how they work with the economic development group. I think we're getting way too overcomplicated, and the pieces that are coming out here, it's very distracting, and it's too much minutia. It's that you need to rename your group as well, but the CAC has to bring those tools forward to the OCP group to interject, and then that's it. And then the economic development group steps forward and says, yes, and this is how we can do that by changing zoning in these areas, period. And I just think it's that simple.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. It's the case where this goes back to Councillor St. Pierre's comment about the lean and mean OCP and what we're legislatively required to put in it. But any council can adopt other outside policies that would set direction and objectives, like the agricultural plan, like a climate action plan, like many of the other policies that we have in our community to make those decisions. The challenge with the OCP that we have is that it became everything to everyone, and then subsequently council spent time amending the OCP to take this or that out, and that's what we want to avoid. Okay, Councillor Logans.
Thanks. We seem to have turned this into some sort of committee of the whole discussion on the OCP rather than focusing on the motion at hand, which is hopefully, I'll make it now, that council directs staff to draft the OCP with the consultant, provide the first draft to the OCP advisory committee for review, and present a complete draft official community plan to council by the end of July 2021, and I'll speak to that if there's a seconder.
Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor St. Pierre seconding. Go ahead, Councillor Logans.
Thank you. Yes, clearly there is a lot to discuss, but I mean, to keep this conversation focused, if this is the strategy that works for the committee, which it sounds like it does, to move ahead, then we should make the motion and allow these conversations to happen going forward.
Yep, good. Councillor St. Pierre is the seconder. Okay, anything else on the motion? I see hands up. Are you looking to speak to the motion now that's on the floor? Councillor Beddoes, you're on the motion then. Go ahead, please.
No, I'm sorry. I was going to comment to Councillor McMath, but it may be a mute. I understand what you're saying, and we're getting a letter from Climate Action Committee, and then the Climate Action Committee is going to be working in the next 2 or 3 years to fine tune whatever they can to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We understand that, and it'll be reflected. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you, Councillor St. Pierre.
Sorry, I just realized I did have a comment. And it basically it revolves around the food security piece, and that was in the previous OCP. My question is, my comment and question is, I'm hoping that as we move forward, that we will be eventually looking at the ag plan to incorporate that as a part of our OCP as a reference document. And I just want that to be clear at this point in time, because we do need to do that work.
Mr. McInnes, do you have a reply for that? You're on mute too.
Yes, there's a number of plans that will be referenced in the OCP. You know, the Transportation Master Plan, the Parks and Trails Master Plan, the Ag Plan should be as well.
Great, thank you. And Mr. McInnes, just to your opening comments about sort of joint meetings, I'm open to the idea of a meeting between the OCP committee and the Sooke MOU committee. However, it depends on how it's structured, because I also sit, as Councillor Logans does as my alternate, to the TTAC, Tumut Treaty Advisory Committee, where we're bound by a certain level of confidentiality that we have to ask permission to even share out with our council. And then also through the CRD, through First Nation Relations, there's also in camera. Now I'm bound to that, the regional district in camera requirements. So in some cases in this, you know, I'm open to that, but it would be up to the Sooke to take the lead. And I don't want the OCP committee to feel that I'm not receptive. I am. It's just there's other privacy that's in place. So it may not be that I can just openly share everything that's happening because of other legislative requirements that are currently in place.
For sure. And I hear that, Your Worship. I think the spirit of the discussion on Friday was just an understanding of how the Sooke Nation would like to be referred to in our OCP. So I think it could be a very narrow line of discussion.
Okay, thank you. So on that note, I'm going to call the question, please. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. So going back to 13.6. And this is where there's proposed amendments to official community plan advisory committee terms of reference. So we've had a lengthy conversation about this, and there's some amendments that are proposed here. The recommendation is that council amend the terms of reference for the OCP advisory committee as provided. Councillor Logans is making that motion, yes? And is there a seconder? It's seconded by Councillor Bateman. Okay, to speak to it, Councillor Logans?
Yeah, I had a question perhaps through you to Mr. McInnes or to Councillor Beddoes. Do the changes look good? Do they still reflect what is needed to achieve the goal of our last motion?
Councillor Beddoes, would you like to answer that?
Yes.
Go ahead then.
Yes.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I don't. There are small changes. It's already being waltzed by the committee. We don't have a problem with it.
Okay, great. So then I'll call the question. All those in favor, please. And that's unanimous. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so the next change was that 14.1 comes before 13.8. So we'll go to 14.1, which is the business license bylaw number 778 information. So over to staff, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Council last discussed this at the April 26th meeting when they received new information about the issues between cross jurisdictions and specifically farm stands. Staff were asked to bring back some options for moving the bylaw forward with third reading, and those are provided in the report. Option 1 is just to give third reading to the bylaw as it was presented at the last meeting. That would ultimately require that all farm stands selling altered products such as canned and baked goods would be required to obtain and pay for a business license. The current home-based business fee is $50. Option 2 is to give that bylaw the same reading, but to amend it by adding a definition of unaltered foods. That would just clarify the difference between farm stands and farm retail. And then option 3 is to give third reading to the bylaw as amended by deleting the definition of farm retail sales, amend the definition of farm stand to include all farm sales so that there would be no difference between altered and unaltered products, and to delete sections 44 and 45 of the bylaw. This amendment would have the ultimate result of requiring farms selling food products only to obtain a business license, but would exempt them from the business license fee.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ms. Machada. So looking then for, this was sort of the outstanding piece, as Ms. Machada has said. So looking for someone to move one of the options. The staff direction here was that council select one and we proceed accordingly. Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, I'd like to move option 3, that they are required to have a license, but we waive the license fee. And I think that the input I had from one individual person, I think it was the fee that was the most annoying. I don't think it's a problem applying for a business license. So
okay,
that's what
so
I
let's look for a seconder for that then. Is Councillor Logan seconding it? No, Councillor St. Pierre is seconding the motion. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Councillor Beddoes has already spoken on it. Councillor St. Pierre, would you like to speak on it?
Yes, I would. I actually consider that the 3 options are pretty much equivalent. The $50 that you don't pay doesn't actually reduce the amount of staff time taken up with these applications, which, as far as I can tell, are unnecessary. In one case, you have exactly what's been proposed. In another case, option 2, you have what's proposed with the definition. And the third option is what's proposed without the fee. But people are still having to get a business license, and it doesn't actually, I think, serve the public. When you look at the service that the district is providing, it should be helping with public safety. It should be doing something useful. But as it stands, what we have is a business license, whether it be for someone knitting socks at a craft fair, or in the case of a farm stand, someone selling jams. And it has to go through the hoops of going through various departments and wasting our staff time. We have a lot of stuff on the docket. We have a lot of important work for them to do that doesn't include actually including farm stands, which was never the case before. So I really don't see why we're continuing to try and include farm stands when it hasn't been traditionally the case and when it's unnecessary to begin with, regardless of fees or not, regardless of definitions or not. I simply don't understand, and I don't believe that we've been given a significantly different option. And I will not be voting for this.
Okay, you do have the option to refer it back to staff if you want to see something different. So I'll put that out there, but I'll go to Councillor Logans. You're on mute too.
Thank you. I can't support the motion or any motion that prevents us from attaching a fee to the business license for this particular subject. All businesses have to pay. This is just another business that has to pay. I'm not sure why we're exempting farm stands, farm retail sales from paying for a business license like every other business has to do. I sort of hear what Councillor St. Pierre was saying, but it's a business, so they should pay a business license fee. I just feel that that's appropriate.
Thank you. Other members of council have any comments on this? Option 3 is what's on the table right now. Councillor Bateman, are you wanting to speak? Go ahead, please.
Yes, I am. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I would agree with Councillor Logan's there. It reminds me of our deferment discussion earlier tonight. Options 1 and 2. Option 1 was as it stood when we first had this discussion. The big issue on that first night related to the unaltered food products and the definition thereof. So yeah, I think I'd be in favor of option number 2. Given that this is a $50 fee and that under option 2, farm stands would still be exempt from that fee, provided they were selling unaltered food products.
Okay, so we have option 3 on the floor, but it's been moved and seconded though, so I'm going to call a question on option 3. All those in favor of option 3? I have Councillor Beddoes in favor. Is anyone else in favor? I'm not seeing no. So I would say that Councillor Beddoes is in favor and all others are opposed. Councillor St. Pierre, Mayor Tate, Councillor McMath, Lajeunesse, Logans, and Councillor Bateman. So looking for another mover, Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, I'll move option number 2.
And that is that council give third reading to business license bylaw number 778 2020 as amended by adding in the following definition, which you see. So is there a seconder for that? And yes. Call for a second time. No. So there's no discussion because there's no seconder. So is there another option, that something else that council would like to move at this point? Councillor St. Pierre, go ahead.
I would suggest that we refer this to the ECDEF committee for discussion and have them come forward with a recommendation. I think that the business license should be assisting with businesses.
Okay, so there's a motion then to refer this to the ECDEF committee. Is there a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor McMath. Anything further to add, Councillor St. Pierre?
No.
Councillor McMath?
I think Councillor St. Pierre's intent is to support local business that seem to have the hardest time to prosper these days, especially with the restrictions on land and those fees. But I do also echo Councillor Logan's statements where it doesn't make sense for them not to pay a fee, but for staff to still have to do the work. Like the money has to come from somewhere. So it's just referring to the ECDEF group. So perhaps there's other ways that we can look at supporting this group who's struggling a little bit.
Okay, so we have a motion to refer to a committee. Is there any other discussion on this? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Is anyone opposed? Councillor Logans is opposed, so it carries. Okay, so then that moves us to 14.1 to 13.8. Okay, so just making sure I'm going back here. So 13.8 is a report on outstanding business license fees. So turn this to staff, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this is an item that came to our attention earlier this year, that there are a significant number of business licenses that have outstanding fees occurring for at least 2 or more years. At the time of writing the report, that number, sorry, working on a new computer screen here, forgive me. So at the time of the writing of the report, there was 185 businesses with outstanding balances. Approximately 100 of those are ones that had simply not paid their 2021 license fee. And it is typical to see a lot of business license paid later in the year. So we do anticipate that most of those will be paid. So of the 185, there were 85 that were in arrears for 2 or more years. And that is could be for various reasons that we are unable as staff to ascertain. Many of the businesses are likely no longer open. I did a quick search of some of them and believe that they really are no longer in business. Bylaw staff or business licensing staff have been in contact with some that have been outstanding for some time. They are struggling, and they have indicated a willingness to try and pay back those license fees through installments. But unfortunately, it's just not worth the administration time that it would take to manage and receive those fees. So the business license policy has been silent on the how to pursue unpaid license fees. It only deals with operating a license without a business while your application for a business license is being processed. So staff are recommending council direct staff to bring back a policy that will specifically address outstanding business license fees. Another reason for untimely follow-up with this is resources. I think that will be a consideration when this comes forward, or when our departments come forward for budget for 2022. But based on council's direction tonight, we will make a concerted effort to follow up and at least clear up these outstanding items. In order to do that, we feel the only way to really make a clean break of this is to waive any outstanding fees. So that would be for the 85 businesses that are outstanding up until December 31st, 2020, and then we will actively pursue the outstanding licenses in effect for 2021. I think that covers it. I'll leave it at that, and if council has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, so questions from council to staff? Councillor St. Pierre, question, go ahead.
I'm just looking for clarity. I think if I understand correctly, the reason for giving the fees would be that we don't have any means of actually dealing with arrears. And so by forgiving them for 2020, it would allow us to move forward appropriately in 2021. Is that correct?
That's correct. And I mean, it's really, I guess it's asking the waiving of that $30,000, 178, but in reality, it won't be that much because some of these businesses have truly closed their doors and won't have owed those fees anyway. But we kind of need to make a clean break somewhere and start moving forward. And I think to chase down those ones that are in arrears would, again, just take too much time administratively.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Machada. So we do have a recommendation. There's the options here. So let's start with the first one. The council received the report for information. Who would like to move that? Moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Beddoes. Receiving for information. All right, all those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. So then the next part here is that council waive all outstanding business license fees up to and including December 31st, 2020. Moved by Councillor McMath, seconded by Councillor Logans. Any comments on this? Councillor McMath? Logans? Anyone? No, it's pretty straightforward. I'll just add that some folks have said, well, why can't we phone in and will the district take Visa? But we're not set up for payments like that or Visa payments, I don't think.
I'll defer to Ms. Gray, but I believe that that is in the work plan for 2021, I believe, if not 2022. But I'll let her respond to that one. That's all right.
Sure.
Thank you, Ms. Machada. Yes, through your worship, that is definitely a project staff are looking into for 2021. We're just trying to do some research on the mechanism for the fees because there's obviously a fee that the credit card company charges. So just trying to figure out how the correct mechanism to pass that fee on to the recipient, or if that's just a fee that the district is supposed to absorb. So, but definitely look for some updates later on in 2021 with the status of that.
Okay, no, that sounds good. Okay, so I'll call the question on number 2. All those in favor, please. And that's unanimous, thank you. And the last part is that council directs staff to bring forward an amendment to the business license policy CO-012 to address outstanding fees. Do we have a mover? Moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Bateman. Any comments from the mover, the seconder? No. Anyone else? No. So I'll call the question then. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay. Well done, everyone. So next up is 14.2. I believe that we're in order here. So that is property tax rate bylaw number 816/2021.
Move adoption.
So that's moved adoption by Councillor Logans, and is there a seconder by Councillor St. Pierre? Thank you. Any comments, Councillor Logans? No. Anything from the seconder? No. Anything from members of council? Seems like so long ago that we were in the budget cycle, but it kind of was actually. So I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Next up, okay, so there's no new business. What I think Councillor Bateman, you were going to recuse yourself for this? You're on mute.
I recuse myself from this one. Yeah.
Okay, so Councillor Bateman is leaving the meeting. We'll need to just, can you just join the meeting, or you can, it joins automatically. Okay, just be on standby so we can have you back before, because we're hitting the hour, okay? So this is pulled for discussion by Councillor St. Pierre, so go ahead, please, Councillor.
Excuse me, Your Worship.
Yes.
We do need to know what the conflict of interest is for Councillor Bateman.
Okay, he left, but he did email me, and I'll just open that. He was a charter member of Zero Waste Sooke, and he would need to seek a legal opinion, and he hasn't had the opportunity to do that. So he was recusing as he was a charter member of the Zero Waste Sooke.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so Councillor St. Pierre, please, you pulled this for discussion.
Yes, thank you very much. And discussion is what I'm looking for, along with some clarity as to what role the district might have, if any, in this type of a project, which, as the letter indicates, is a resource recovery center. So the request from Mr. Klassen is to actually potentially pass this on to the ACDEV committee, given that it would be a local economic development initiative. But I wanted to bring it forward to council because often we're asked about, a project or whether we could support something, and I'm not exactly sure how we would actively support a resource recovery center, whether we would support it with land or anything else. I mean, I don't know what the district's role could be, but I wanted to bring that forward to find out if staff had something that they could comment on, or if council had anything further they might have to add.
Okay, so I'll ask first if staff have any comment.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Carter is not on the line tonight. So if you recall, we do have, the definition of resource recovery center could be various things, but we have been talking about a central deposit area in our Kaltassan yards where things could be dropped off. There's also a private resource recovery center that's on Idlemore, where various construction materials that are clean can be taken to that resource recovery center and recycled as well. So two things going on, one private, one public. I'm not sure where we're at with our Kaltassan Yard drop-off center, and I'd have to get an update from Mr. Carter.
So I think just back to Councillor St. Pierre, I think it's a bit early. Staff are certainly working on this. We did have a conversation earlier this year, I believe, about this. So I think that report is going to come at an upcoming meeting.
Thank you. Would it be possible to get a response from Mr. Carter or from staff to Mr. Klassen on this, let them know what's going on?
Okay, so maybe what council could do in terms of a resolution is that council directs staff to respond to Mr. Klassen with an update on our initiatives. Would that suffice? Would that work, Mr. McInnes?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll look for a mover, please, for that. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor McMath. All right, all those in favor, please.
Your worship, I see that Jeff is on the line. I'm not sure if he can address this or not.
I think it would help if he's actually able to, because Mr. Carter provides very detailed and very thorough responses to our residents, and so I think just given the hour that I'd like to go ahead with the resolution. We could be CC'd in on it, and then if something further is needed, it can be sort of come back as a correspondence item for us to discuss. Sound good? Okay, yeah. So we've dealt with that. So we need to get Councillor Bateman back into the meeting. Is anyone reaching out to him, or as I sit here and stare at the screen? If we're all doing that, we're going to sit here for a long time.
How do we reach out to him?
Do you want me to call him, or is staff emailing?
I'm sending him an email. I thought maybe someone was phoning him, but I just sent an email.
Emails sometimes take a while to get through.
I don't know how else to reach him, though.
I'm calling him.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just need someone to do something. This is just where the function, it's handy to be able to move people into the lobby or the waiting room, but it just doesn't work. Ah, there he is. Okay, he's incoming. He's back with us. Thank you. Okay, we're pushing on here and we're on to our next item. And let me find it again. So this is the Motor Vehicle Act pilot program. So this is a request, another correspondence item that has been brought here. So Councillor Bateman, did you request this?
Your worship, I put it on because the City of Victoria made a specific request of the district.
Oh, I see. Okay, so it's here from the City of Victoria. Okay, so
move receipt.
Move receipt by Councillor Logans and seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. Okay, so on it, Councillor Logans, go ahead as the mover. Anything?
Yeah, I think if the pilot seems like it's going to go ahead, so I would say let them do it. And if it becomes something that the province moves ahead with, then we can join at that time.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lajeunesse is the seconder.
Yeah, I don't think we need to do anything with this. I think we can assess our speed limits based on a kind of a case-by-case basis. I don't think we need to reduce the speed limit to 30 everywhere. That's unless we're seeing a lot of death and destruction everywhere on all of our roads. I don't think we need to worry about this.
Councillor St. Pierre.
I think that the 30-kilometer limit does offer us the opportunity to get active neighborhoods happening. So where you have mobility scooters, where you have electric scooters and e-bikes, pedestrians, and so on and so forth. This would happen in residential neighborhoods where you often have cars parked on either side, where it's actually quite dangerous for cars to be zipping along at 50K. Most people that are reasonable already slow down a fair bit, but this hopefully would be something like a province-wide or even a regional initiative that would allow us to use signage, have an education campaign, get people knowing what's going on, and ideally improve the safety while also allowing more active transportation in our cities. The question would be whether or not and how this would work at a rural level. It's interesting. It's good that it's happening, in Victoria with all that, but I'm not sure how it would work here. But I do think it's something we have to keep our eye on because I think it's something we're going to have to consider more fully in the future.
Okay, Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, I'll agree with Councillor Logans on this, that and note that it's the core communities in the CRD that are moving forward with this: Victoria, Sanichoke, Bay Esquimalt, View Royal, along with Sydney. But as Staff Sergeant Sinden told us, the big issue is interjurisdictional common purpose. So here on the West Shore, no Langford, Colwood, Machosen are involved in this. So I think it's wise for us to wait and see.
Thank you. Councillor McMath?
Councillor Bateman, my exact words. So thank you.
Okay, and I'll just share that this has been back and forth through the CRD's Transportation Committee, and it just sort of is where it is. So it's great that they're moving on with it, and I agree with the motion to receive and file. So I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. So any verbal reports from members of council? Councillor Beddoes?
Yeah, just bring it up to date. I don't know if you know that Steve Kanoki from Sea Park is leaving Sea Park, and he's taken a job in Esquimalt. I've wished him the best. He's been one of the most refreshing people to work with over these last 2 years. The guy is just right on the game, and I'm going to miss him greatly down there. Hopefully his replacement is the same caliber, which I assume it will. But Steve is moving on, and I congratulated him, and I assume it's a step upwards. He's working for the municipality of Esquimalt. So that's a little bit of sad news for us, but good news for Steve. He's moving on up, and that's great. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor Beddoes. Councillor Lajeunesse?
Yeah, just a quick report on the Community Act Dev Committee. We had a workshop on Friday where we had a couple of members of the Climate Action Committee that were invited. We had quite a broad discussion around a lot of topics related to ACDEV. And I don't think it was quite as focused as our Community Act Dev officer would have liked. I think she was looking for more of a kind of a strat planning session, but I'm confident that she will be able to pull something together out of it, and we'll probably have more discussion on that. And the other thing is that I got vaccinated today, so I can get COVID now and I don't have to die.
Okay, well, that's something. Just don't spread it. Okay, so other members of council for updates? Councillor Bateman? You're on mute?
Yes, yes, I am. And here I am live. CAC, the notorious CAC, as we'll have the t-shirts made, met with the Community Economic Development Committee last week, which I think in the first time in your memory, Madam Mayor, is that two committees had met. It was a really good session, start of a very useful collaborative relationship, I think. And it was great that our chair and vice chair was invited to Friday's meeting. So economic development, community economic development, right? That's this bigger picture. We also had the fourth standalone meeting of the Climate Action Committee 2 weeks ago, and we'd like to organize a workshop so that we are best positioned and prepared and organized leading up to our termination date of late November, as it currently stands. So we're seeking out some local facilitators, and hopefully that will come to pass gratis. And if not, we may come to you as council to seek a little bit of funding for that workshop. I sat in on last week's SPA committee as members began exploring how to address this council's resolution, asking them to explore how to increase event and recreational activities in our parks. And also, as they were discussing the community hall and on roped off, closed off streets for festivals and that sort of thing. So lots of fantastic ideas. And last but not least, Carol and I also got our vaccines on Friday at Sea Park. So we're in the Pfizer generation. And I was just amazed at how well organized and particularly how friendly and welcoming the nurse was to the two of us and to everyone else coming in. And just such the jab was done so quickly and effortlessly. So remarkable times we live in. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Bateman. Councillor Lajeunesse, did you have another comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to, sorry, I should have said this earlier, just a shout out to all of the nurses. It is our National Nurse Week this week, and they do, yeah, the nurses are angels as far as I'm concerned. They're probably the reason that I'm still alive. So there's that.
Thank you, Councillor Lajeunesse. It is a good shout out. Just briefly for myself, I shared with you that I was speaking in the CAO forums or CEO forums, so I've done that. And one of the climate action takeaways that I got from the district of, or from the municipality of Saanich, was when you're stellar storytelling, answer the what's in it for me. So protect what residents love, but also answer what's in it for me. And then further to that, I was in a workshop with the UDI about the housing supply. So the first round had our municipal planner involved. The second round was the mayors from the communities. The third round would be the minister responsible. So being that it is a developer audience, they were asking things like, will you lower or get rid of DCCs? How will you support your staff? How will you meet the demands of all this? And I did say that the DCCs here are necessary. We're a growing community with infrastructure that needs to happen, and so just deal with the fact that we've increased our fees for the first time in 20 years. And then with the market being what it is, even if we were to do away with all of this, when houses come on the market, they're going for what the market will pay. It doesn't mean, I've never seen a developer tell someone, well, you only need to pay me $250,000 for this. I'm not going to take any more profit off of this. So that exists in the not-for-profit purpose-built affordable housing, but not in the free market conditions. So it was sort of knowing the audience, but I was pleased to participate in it anyway, just the same. Today I was in a workshop with Access to Justice, which is a UBCM committee that I'm on, but I was able to share some of the impacts that our community have felt through COVID, the inequality that exists, and the concern I have is more folks falling through the cracks to not be able to access technology or the support that they need in communities. I shared some of the information we learned through our community grant process and how this is impacting a mid-sized community like our own. And then this coming Wednesday, I'll be in CRD meetings all day. There's a workshop on strategic priorities in the morning and followed by the full board in the afternoon. One of the motions I put forward was to deal with a mountain bike policy, because the Regional Parks Committee was 4 hours long, delegations from all sorts, just looking for more access to trails. And I just think there's good guidelines that have been brought forward, but what is missing is the policy. And it goes back to the notice of motion that Councillor Bateman and I brought forward, which specifically asked for a policy to come forward to the board. So that piece for me is still missing. So it's something that I'll continue to bring forward this coming week. But I know everyone, we're getting on now, so thank you for the conversation. I know the OCP conversation was a bit long. However, I think it's just necessary for everyone to be able to comment a bit. And I thank Councillor Logans for reining it in, because we were starting to drift, so it needed to happen. But otherwise, thank you everyone for your participation tonight, as well as the special meetings that we held to process all the grants. I also will share that I did have the meeting with Minister Farnworth and other mayors impacted by the South Island mayors in particular, about the e-com costs that are coming potentially our way. Just an FYI, this is over $300,000 expense. It's not like it's $20,000 that we can absorb. This is equivalent to nearly a 6% tax increase. So yeah, I don't believe it's over yet, although it seems that that is the way that it's being sort of handled. The federal government is, oh, this is local government. So I did want to present a solution, and I suggested as a solution that they flow the 25% of cannabis revenue share to local governments, as was committed by the federal government, and that would help us at least provide a funding tool to address both infrastructure needs as well as costs like this that come out of nowhere. So I got a smile as a response, but not much more than that. we'll keep on fighting. So it's something anyway. Anyway, thank you all. Thank you, staff, for your time today. Members of the public that are viewing, I'll share that I'm booked for my vaccine on the 21st of this month, so not that far away. And it seems that they're moving through very quickly. And we heard Dr. Henry say that 2 million people in BC have been vaccinated thus far. So we're getting somewhere, and it seems, I'm hoping that we have a good outcome on the 24th when these current restrictions are reviewed, because I find them to be incredibly difficult. So on that note, stay well, everyone, and I'll call for a motion to adjourn, please. A motion to adjourn by Councillor Lajeunesse and seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Have a good night, everyone. All those in favor, and hoping you're all in favor. Okay, none opposed. Take good care, everyone, and be well out there. Thanks for all you're doing.